Sort of coming Chapter 1109. There is more than one cross-continental ferry, so there must be some clues about Zhenlongxi. Boarding the dragon and snake traces, ascending the heights and overlooking, Chen Shanzhu accidentally saw the Dragon's Ridge mountain. A certain proposal of Mi Jianxian shouldn't be made when there are many people. Being the chief of the next sect, is he still wronged? Li Muzhou, the current viewer of Jingwei Temple. When the Taoist priest came, the nascent soul realm had not yet reached the bottleneck, but when he left, it was already jade. Previously in the study of the gatekeeper of Luopa Mountain, Taoist Xianwei, Li Muzhou seemed to be enlightened by a single word, and his mood was opened, like a heavy rain washing away the dust, and like turning the clouds to see the sun. The momentum is like a broken bamboo. Then broken. When Li Muzhou came out of the state of Xinzhai and came back to his senses, he broke through, and the Taoist priest, who was not stagnant and refreshed, still checked his mind carefully, and it was really all right. Li Muzhou immediately stood up from the chair, with 1,000 words in his mind. It seemed that they were all burdensome, so he had to say a very solemn Taoist check. Like a Taoist priest worshipping piously, a Taoist mountain that stands upright. At this moment, Taoist Xianwei was completely confused. Li Dao Chang, even if you don't know the answer to the question on the origami page, you don't have to feel so guilty if you can't answer it. The key is why you still have red eyes. After much deliberation, Xianwei could only come up with an answer that he could barely convince himself. He is indeed a serious Taoist priest who came out of a famous school. Courtesy is a lot. Apologies are so polite. Xianwei just wanted to give Li Muzhou a gift. After all, he was the gatekeeper of Luoba Mountain, and he was also the new mountain owner of the fragrant volcano. He also took in an apprentice. The burden on his shoulders was heavy. The etiquette. I never thought that the mountain master would appear in the study out of thin air, and stretch out his hand to support Xianwei's arm. The meaning could not be more obvious, so that Xianwei does not have to return the courtesy. If he hadn't become the master of the Jingwei Temple, Li Muzhou might be the Taoist priest he most wanted to stay after all. After all, the general affairs were heavy. This desolate mountain, strange or not, really makes Li Muzhou feel too natural and friendly. At that time, Chen Pinggond accompanied Li Muzhou out of the house. The rain had stopped outside the house. Li Muzhou even forgot to take the oil paper umbrella. Still remembering things, he picked up the umbrella and ran to the door, calling for that Li Daochang, but Chen Pinggond turned his head and laughed road as Li Daochang's slight thank you, just accept it. Xianwei had no choice but to accept it. Li Muzhou blushed a little and explained to Chen Shanzhu in a low voice, that umbrella is just an ordinary item. Chen Ping said with a smile, that's the best way to pay more attention to courtesy than courtesy. Daoist Xianwei now has a mountain top, which is not too close to here. It takes a lot of foot strength, and it is rainy, so it is useful for walking on the road. Li Muzhou hesitated to speak, just because his breakthrough was too mysterious. Chen Ping put his arms around his sleeves, and he helped to give an explanation that was far-fetched, very far-fetched, and reasonable but extremely reasonable. It's all white. Li Muzhou nodded and said with a smile, anyway, Mr. Chen's Luopa Mountain is really a blessed place for the poor. Whenever there is an opportunity, he will come here often. I hope Mr. Chen will not get bored. Chen Pinggond said, since it can become Daoist Li's blessed place for cultivating Taoism, it is naturally because the vegetation here has a blind date with the Taoist priest. The grass and trees are like this, so it's not human. Li Muzhou asked, where is the house? Chen Ping smiled and said, Dao Zhongli can show up now. Li Muzhou walked out of the house, greeted Chen Pinggond, and walked up the mountain alone. Chen Ping went to the table. It turned out that Master Wen didn't wait for Pei Qian, but Bai Xian, who was waiting for a rabbit, was urging Wen carefully to sign a certain booklet. Don't you want to fight with Pei Qian? Come with us, there are many people and strength is great, 2 fists are hard to beat 4 hands. With the help of Brother Wen, it will be easy to clean up a Pei Qian in the future. Wen Xiaoxiu was completely confused. He didn't understand what was going on in the mind of this kid who drank goji berry tea and invited him to join the gang as soon as he met. Seeing the middle-aged man in the green shirt and long jacket, Wen Xinxi stood up, with a strange expression, his body tensed, and he clasped his fists and said, "Wen Cc of Lingfei Palace, pay homage to Qin Jianxian. On the Hehuan Mountain, there are juniors who are frivolous and ignorant." Up. Chen Pingan smiled and said, "There is nothing to offend or not to offend. Take a step back and say that offending me is nothing. Anyway, it is not a family. The big deal is that the well water does not violate the river water. Outside of Luoluo Mountain and Lingfei Palace, you and I want to meet Biden again. Day is still difficult. But haven't you figured out who that person is until now?" Wen carefully asked suspiciously, "You mean the person who drank at the same table as Qin Jianxian?" Chen Pingan said, "Otherwise. Wen Shishio is now full of Guru Pei Qian, and he is about to have a demon. How can he care about that? Who owes him? If possible, I really want to give him a big mouth." Chen Ping smiled and said, "Wen carefully, think about it carefully. Anyone can say the phrase, if the poor Taoist is your master's patriarch, Daoist I am your patriarch's master." Wen carefully looked as if he had been struck by 5 thunders for a moment, and was dumbfounded. Is it really the portrait of the patriarch hanging on the highest place in the patriarch hall of the Taoist palace? That white jade headmaster Jinglu wearing a lotus crown? Wen Cc was full of tears, facing the direction of Hehuan Mountain, knelt 3 times and kowtowed 9 times, and said in a trembling voice, "Wen Cc of Lingfei Palace, I pay my respects to the Supreme Patriarch and Teacher Lu. Lu Chen's lineage, respecting the teacher, really has nothing to say. From the Xiancha who dares to scold the world and everyone, but who does not scold his master, to Chao Rong, the heavenly king who has been deceived by his master and has been delayed for a long time, and has never complained, to his disciple Sun Xiangjuan, and even if you are expelled from the division, Xiao Fuyang, who still recognizes Lu Chen as his ancestor, and Qing Qian, the real person who wants to beat Xiao Fuyang to death because of Xiao Fuyang's Taoist uniform, of course, there is also the arrogant Wen Shishi in front of him." Bai Xian asked in his heart, "Master Chao, what's the matter with this guy? Let me explain in advance, I didn't say anything, the conscience of heaven and earth, I just invited him to occupy a place on the list of heroes." Chen Pingan explained, "It has nothing to do with you. He always wanted to meet someone, but he didn't recognize him when he saw it. He missed it. It's hard to say whether he will have the chance to meet again in this life." Bai Xian nodded. In this way, he can be considered a man of temperament, such a hero, he should be included in the list of heroes. Chen Ping stretched out his hand, "Here, take a look at that booklet." Bai Xian's spirit was shaken, and he said happily, "Master Chao, you also want to record your name?" "That's it." Chen Ping hit Bai Xian with a chestnut and put his head in his hands, and said with an angry smile, "Do you know that Pei Qian is your age? Even if I say something to her, I have to go through my brain several times to make sense of it." As expected of Bai Xian asked tentatively, "Master Chao, is there such a possibility that Pei Qian will be less willing to use his brain once his boxing level is high?" Chen Ping rubbed the center of his eyebrows, stretched out his hand to hold Bai Xian's head, and said with a smile, "You have great courage." After Wen stood up carefully, his expression had returned to normal. Chen Pingan said, "If Master Wen is not in a hurry, go to Jumping Fish Mountain and wait. Pei Qian will show up to have a match or 2 with you soon." Wen carefully judged the 2, and said, "I dare not call it a competition, but I just ask Grandmaster Pei for advice." Chen Pingan said, "Of course you are a martial arts genius, but you are not a pure martial artist." Wen was careful and silent. Chen Ping said with a smile, if you really want to learn boxing, then going up the mountain is easy, but going down the mountain is not necessarily. When said carefully, the younger generation is already mentally prepared. Chen Ping pointed to the direction of Jumping Fish Mountain. Pei Qian is already waiting for you at the foot of the mountain. Wen carefully cupped his fists to say goodbye, and galloped away with a lot of momentum, when a series of noises like thunder rolled on the ground sounded on the road. Bai Xian sighed in admiration. It is really admirable to dare to single out Pei Qian. It is worth me to make an exception and write his name first. Pei Qian followed the master so far in the rivers and lakes. There is a tacit understanding. For example, when Zhou Haijing wanted to ask about boxing, Chen Pingan said, "Don't take it too seriously if you are too serious about invincibility, which means that you need to pay attention to all this. Discuss, but don't hurt your peace." What Chen Pingan and Pei Qian said today, the front and back sentences just reversed, the meaning is not difficult to understand. In fact, it is just one point: you can't kill people. When carefully arrived at the foot of Jumping Fish Mountain, just cupped his fists and wanted to speak. Pei Qian just said, "Same situation." In a blink of an eye, the punch has arrived. When carefully had no time to fight, let alone fight back, when Pei Qian hit him in the neck and knocked him down. When Xixia's eye sockets were instantly bloodshot, and the blood in his body surged like a flood bursting a bank. Pei Qian stomped his feet lightly again, and when Cixi, who was lying on the ground bleeding from his orifices, bounced up. When Pei Qian came to him, she kicked Wen Cixi with her toes, and threw Wen Cixi into the martial arts arena on the mountain. It's really easy to go up the mountain. A person suddenly fell from the sky. The 6 martial arts practitioners were startled. When Xing lay down on the muddy ground of the martial arts arena, struggled to get up several times, and vomited a big mouthful of blood, but the blood flowed a little bit, opened his eyes, the blue sky was thousands of miles away, and he felt comfortable. If you can't bear Pei Qiantong's 2 punches, you won't go down the mountain. Qin Yuanji just glanced at it, and shouted, "Keep going." A man sitting on a bench picking his feet hurriedly shouted, "This man who fell from the sky, don't come to our place to cheat the medicine fee." From this day on, there will be one more martial arts master in Jumping Fish Mountain who only receives 1 punch from Pei Qian every day. Then negotiate the price with Master Zheng, soak a bucket of medicine, 1 price a day. The market is not the same. When carefully doesn't bother to care about this, let Master Zheng keep it in the account. The 6 people who originally thought that it was quite hard to learn boxing in Taoyuan, saw with their own eyes every day a master from Yunyujing fell to the ground, slept peacefully for a while, and then staggered up. His clothes were soaked in blood. They are all bright red footprints. From this point of view, learning boxing is not hard. Pei Qian came over to feed punches, not at regular intervals. If it was in the morning to teach punches, when carefully liked it, after being punched, he felt his whole body fell apart, so he went to soak in a steaming hot tub. Taking a bath with medicinal water, changing into clean clothes, sitting on the small bench refreshed, chatting with Master Zheng, watching those boys and girls practicing boxing, it was very good, and the day was very fulfilling. If Pei Qian came to feed his punches at night, Wen Xingxiu would have been worried for a long time, sitting sickly on the bench, unable to lift his spirits, and he didn't dare to ask Pei Qian. It was Master Zheng who was righteous and helped him after a discussion. The daily discussion will be scheduled at 1 o'clock in the morning. As a reward, Wen carefully gave Master Zheng and that Master Cin a helping hand, teaching the 6 children a few stances and boxing moves. Once you come and go, you will get the name of Master Wen now, because there is a Master Zheng who is, not to be judged by his appearance, to accompany him to gag and talk about the mountains, when Xingxiu doesn't feel that the life of practicing boxing and teaching boxing in the mountains is so boring. 2 guys who will enjoy themselves on the top of the downcast mountain are lying on wicker chairs. The sword fairy is eating melon seeds, and the master is eating longan. "Brother Zhong, it doesn't seem to be a problem for you to be so idle every day. I heard that the swordsman Chao Ni is already a martial artist with a golden body, and He Chizhou is not a weak hand, the #1 in the world. Name, don't you want it? Brother me, you'll go to Jumping Fish Mountain tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. I heard from Meili that there's an extra traveler called Wen Shixiong over there. I'll go meet for a while. Brother Zhong, if I remember correctly, you also said the same thing the day before yesterday. You said that you will meet Jing Dafeng for a while, and weigh the weight of this former gatekeeper. This morning, the old chef's topping noodles, I always feel that the taste is not as good as yesterday. Is it because I have a tricky mouth, or is the old cook just not paying attention today, just perfunctory our brothers? Brother Zhong, help me think of a more reliable way, how to delay the date of going to Tongyi's house. Go to the sword worship platform and have a fight with that old deaf boy. If you get injured, you can stay here to recuperate. The old deaf child may not be willing to agree to this matter. Brother Mi is the chief priest of the next sect anyway. Even if the meeting is held in the Patriarch Hall of Jisa Peak, the seat position is still very close to the front. Although the old deaf child has a higher realm, after all, it's just a general offering from our lost mountains, and the first level of the official ranks crushes people to death. Well, what's more, you are still half of the same country, and he doesn't give you this bit of face. Can't that's too bad for a person. Ha! That makes sense. Brother Zhong, what do you want to eat for tonight's supper? It's sad. Don't worry, think about it quickly. Xiaomi Li told me in private that the skill of the old cook is directly related to our requirements. Okay, if that's the case, then I'm going to be ashamed, and I'm going to make everyone more happy. In the end, the Taoist priests who chose to stay in Luoluo Mountain became 4 because of one more Liang Chaoguan who temporarily changed his mind. Liang Chaoguan was of course very jealous of that Qin Shanzhu, but when the young Taoist priest thought of the great reputation of his uncle, Yi Chusher, he felt even more uncertain. This is called choosing the lesser of two evils. It's really not that Liang Chaoguan is timid. In fact, there are many Taoist priests who fear Yi Dan, Tao Fushan and Do Ran sect. Although Yi Dan, native place, was born in Erhu Peak of Taofu Mountain, and her dojo is on the back mountain of Erhu Peak, but Yi Dan is also one of the Do Ran sect's Hai Gong masters. The reason why she is the head of 2 Dao veins is that there is a mysterious cause and effect of going up the mountain. If Yi Dan was not robbed in the Great Wall of Sword Chi back then, she was hit by a certain number and could not escape. Otherwise, with Yi Dan aptitude and bones, she would definitely be an immortal, should have been the peak master of Erhu Peak long ago. And the Taoist protector who was supposed to fight for a chance to help her escape was the Taoist partner of Tong Meng, the founder of Do Ran and one of the 6 descendants of Yu Xian. It was just that she hurt Yi Dan in order to save Yi Dan on the battlefield. At the root of the Tao, she passed away soon, and her reincarnation, this life, is the female crown Wenxia who was brought back to the mountain by Yi Dan himself to renew her celestial relationship. Yi Dan felt guilty for the Do Ran faction, so he only kept the golden and jade genealogy of the Erhu Peak Daoji, and then relied on his own strength and all he had. After accumulating merit, she transferred to the Duran school, and was promoted step by step to the high level of the Duran school. In addition, she also served as one of the special Taoist officials in the Taofu Mountain Patriarch Hall, and was in charge of picking up the merits and demerits of Taoist priests from one mountain in 4 sections. There are even some gossips. In the early years, Yu Xian had approached Yi Dan in private and asked her if she had any thoughts on being the Taoist priest of Taofu Mountain Patriarch Hall. She said no. According to outside rumors, Yi Dan's reason was that his morals were too low to take on a big responsibility. But in fact, there is no such nonsense. Yi Dan and that Patriarch Yu Xian, from the beginning to the end, she just said no. On the Jumping Fish mountainside, there are only 6 cultivators, and among the preachers, there are the second seats in Luoba Mountain to worship Xiago, and the young men who have been arrested for a few days are named to worship Gan Tang, and they moved here from Jiling Peak. The 4 Taoist masters of the Middle Earth Shenzhou Real. 6 people went to the mountain to practice, and there were 6 masters who helped to preach. Isn't the 2 sides of learning and preaching the same as one-on-one? Generally speaking, the so-called personal inheritance in the mountains is mostly a situation where a master brings several direct descendants. How can there be such special treatment that is rare and unimaginable? This made the 6 Jumping Fish Mountain learners, all of them the sable-hat girl who first came to Jumping Fish Mountain to be a master. She called herself Bai Jing, and had beheaded several throne monsters. Whoever dares to believe such a thing, everyone has doubts in their hearts. Probably on the battlefield of the Great Wall of Sword Chi, the day before yesterday I sacrificed a flying sword to a certain throne monster, and yesterday I threw a spell at another throne monster from a distance. Is it considered cut? When it comes to preaching, Xiago has no patience. Whenever they ask a question, Xia, who always likes to put the second seat on his mouth, will stare at someone and look at each other. The latter doesn't know what he is asking. Too mysterious or too superficial. Later, Xiago felt that their previous learning paths were too unsightly, so he casually threw out several chi refining and breathing techniques and cave-carrying techniques, a total of 6 kinds, which happened to belong to 6 categories, and asked them to study hard. Practice, don't pick and choose, learn all. She will test the results after a while, first determine their general aptitude for learning different Taoism, and then she will make a decision, how to tailor the preaching to them. Start small stove. The 6 people went in without knowing it, no matter how good their aptitude was, and no matter how talented they were in cultivating Taoism, they were after all the outstanding ones in a certain country and place in Aquarius continent. Who knew the meaning of the Dao name Bai Jing, and how did she know that this girl with a sable hat was a well-deserved one among the Taoist priests of a group of cranes on the ancient land? Anyway, in the minds of the 6 of them, at least for the time being, this Master Xia's cultivation attainments seemed to be inferior to that of the general worshipper, Gan Tang, who came later. Help to solve the puzzle, and the answer is extremely accurate. Some are lost. The old deaf-mute eats Coptis chinensis, and occasionally looks cautiously at Senior Bai Jing in the distance. The latter smiles, nods, and casts an encouraging or gratifying look. He is not bad at teaching. It made the old deaf children worry about whether they would become long-term workers just because they were working part-time. From Taofu Mountain in the ancestral court, he is the first disciple of Yang Xianbao on Hebei Peak, Xiangtong, Yuanying. In terms of seniority, they are Fulu Yuxuan's grandchildren, but they are already too tall to be taller. Feixian Palace Libiu, the reincarnation disciple of Tianjun Shuizhisui. The direct disciple of Mei Jin, head of the Do Ran School, Bai Feng. There is also Taofu Mountain Iho Peak, Liang Chaoguan. Among the 3 young Jindan Earth Immortals, Liang Chaoguan was still a sword cultivator. When the alchemy reached the 2nd rank, they also gave birth to a natal flying sword. The sword turns with the breath, and within Liang Chaoguan's body and the world, there will be auspicious visions that recur in the dark and the past. What's more, the ancestral Taoism book, Hunyuan 8-scene sword classic, enshrined in the Patriarch Hall of Hofeng, is ready to move, as if paying homage and congratulating. Master immediately helped to report the great news to Zhushitang, so Liang Chaoguan was eligible to visit Yunmeng Cave. He and Hebifeng Xiangtong have always disliked anyone, a master who thinks that the other party is lying on the credit book, and every time he shows up, his eyes grow above his eyebrows. One thinks that the other party is because of 2-1 aptitude for cultivation. Generally speaking, only then will there be branches outside the Tao of talismans, and become some kind of sword cultivator, who will have a lot of promise in the future. If it weren't for this trip to Luopa Mountain, since the 2 hate each other, it would be better not to see each other. Taofu Mountain has a vast territory, with more than 20 peaks, and more than 300 Taoist temples and palaces in the mountain. There are so many Taoist priests. At the ferry, How many Taoist priests will meet with someone today, and if they want to see each other again, they don't know the year of the monkey. I never thought that now they need to get along day and night, seeing each other every day. Bai Xian got advice from Guozhuzhou, and went to retreat without saying hello to anyone. It is called retreat, but it is just closing the door and sitting on the futon. To retreat and break through the realm, Bai Xian only used an incense stick of kung fu, and when he left the customs, he was already a sword cultivator in the Longmen realm who was full of spirit and full of sword spirit. A natal flying sword hovers around Bai Xian non-stop, like thousands of wisps of white clouds lingering around a lofty mountain. Bai Xian threw off his sleeve and said the word receive, and the flying sword returned to the center of his eyebrows. Originally, when he heard the commotion outside the house, Bai Xian immediately became unhappy and looked down on someone. Do you feel that your retreat may not be successful, and you need to protect yourself? Or do you feel that you have become a little dragon gate, so you want to congratulate me? What a stinking problem, our Luobashan can't be spoiled by you, so vain and pretentious, Mr. Bai is not used to you. Just about to eat a few caddies of arsenic, when I went out, I saw everyone scolding me. As a result, Bai Xian turned his head and saw that Master Chow was also there, sitting on the bamboo chair in the porch of his own room. With a bad smile, he trotted up to the guy in the green shirt, long coat, cloth shoes and smoking a cigarette, and stood still suddenly. Master Chow, you don't need to worry. Chen Ping said with a smile, this retreat took up a lot of time, half a stick of incense longer than I expected. Next time, we will continue to work hard. Xiao Mili sat aside, holding a golden pole and a green bamboo stick, clapping her hands silently. It's amazing. Chen Pingon stood up, put the pipe in his sleeve, waved the smoke, and said with a smile, old deaf man. Son, jumping into the fish mountain to help preach, now that there are enough people, you don't have to worry about it here. There are too many masters who preach and teach, but it is easy for those who learn the Tao to have no way to start, and they are too greedy to chew. Of course, if you are particularly interested in teaching, you can also go there to take a closer look. In short, this matter is not compulsory, it all depends on your personal hobbies. As if the old deaf child had been pardoned, his old face, which had been wrinkled in pain, gradually became more relaxed. Never thought that Senior Bai Jing squinted and wanted to run. You are an ordinary worshipper, with low status and arrogance, and you still want to ask me and Xiaomo for some sword skills. Do you know how difficult it was in the ancient times to obtain a sentence or two of true biography? Back then, how many enlightened demon chi refiners were willing to be the gatekeepers of the caves and the mountain guards of the dojos for hundreds of years in order to hear the Taoism from a certain person who had attained the Tao? The old deaf boy knew that he was on a pirate ship, so he had to pretend to think about it, and temporarily changed his words. Shanju, I think it is best to have a beginning and an end when doing something. I will not go to the fish mountain every day, so as not to hinder other masters teach, even I'll go over there to have a look and give some pointers. It's not difficult after all, and it should be. Chen Pingon looked puzzled, and said empathetically, wouldn't it delay Gantang's self-cultivation? The old deaf child glanced at the young Ingguan, but the Lord Ingguan didn't have a definite hint, so he had to make the least mistaken choice. No, since I have become a priest of Luoba Mountain, I must do something within my ability. Just like a teacher who preaches harshly, asked the lazy apprentice, the boy is so diligent in practice, staying up late to complete the Taoist lessons, it will not hurt the spirit, pay more attention to the body. Chen Pingon nodded and said, it's fine if you want to, and jumping into the fish mountain to preach is enough. The old deaf boy has a smile on his face, and I have told you all the beautiful things, so I will just let it go. Isn't it just not paying attention? This Luopa mountain is really not a place where honest people can stay. It's really not a place for people to stay. As soon as that surname Chen left, the old deaf boy saw that Senior Bai Jing looked unhappy. The old deaf child was depressed. Where did he say something wrong again? Before leaving the sword-worshipping platform, Chen Pingan laughed in his heart. When Xiaomo returns to the mountain, you two will more or less take the time to teach Gan Tang one or two superior sword skills suitable for him. Xiago reluctantly said, the old deaf boy is not worthy of letting Xiaomo teach swordsmanship in person, but I can choose a time when I am in a good mood and teach him two kinds of weak swordsmanship. This time it was the mountain master's turn to squint at the second seat. Xiago had no choice but to explain sincerely, Lord Shan, the same swordsmanship and two cultivators, one who has heard the Tao can be divided into 3 warriors, can they be the same? My chicken ribs are Gantang's supreme treasure. Don't worry, he will be grateful to Dade. Damn it, if it were me, if I could help a few children to preach for a few days casually, say with a few baskets of nonsense, you can learn 2 kinds from someone, even if it's just one kind that can make by Jingxi and Yi's superb swordsmanship. From the sword worship platform to the jumping fish mountain, I have to walk there on my knees every day, and I am willing to climb it. Lord of the mountain, to tell you the truth, back then I was extremely firm in my pursuit of Taoism, and I went forward without hesitation. Chen Pingan said helplessly, I believe what I said before, and it is indeed sincere. It's the last sentence, don't add to the superfluous. Xiao Mo will occasionally talk to me about some past events, your so-called heart of seeking Tao, isn't it Shan Zai now? Xiu's patriarch. Killed a few, got a few cheat books, learned them, and then went to block the way, and accepted the Tao name that sounded pleasing to the ear. Xiago shyly said, Shemo is really, that's what I said. Chen Pingan said, no wonder Mr. Zheng looks at you with admiration. It turns out that he regards you as a senior on the same path. Xiago said cautiously, City Lord Jing also often robs houses, kills people and steals goods, destroys corpses and wipes out traces. Chen Ping smiled and said, that's not the case, it should be more reserved and in line with the rules. After all, it is in the world of Hauran. If it is in the wilderness, it will be hard to say. Won't it be worse than Zhou? Xiago said, if it wasn't for the mountain master to open his mouth and ease his cheeks, Shema and I would not be able to teach Gontang swordsmanship. Chen Ping asked curiously, why? Xiago grinned and said, Xiaoma doesn't like old deaf children like cowards. If Xiaoma doesn't like it, she doesn't like it. Chen Pingan said, you don't know, according to the secret records of the Summer Palace, this fellow Daoist Longxing also performed feats when he was young. The old deaf child is unwilling to open this pot of old wine and invite people to drink. It's not good for me to be an outsider. Yuzu took over. A cross-continental ferry, dragon snake track, that never leaves when it comes to Nujiadu is leased to Luoluo Mountain for free for 100 years. Jiang Shangjin had already walked around the ferry carefully, shaking his head, there was a fly in the ointment. Even if old Master Yu was a little more sincere and willing to take the initiative to send dozens of main drawings and hundreds of appendix drawings to Luo Bashan, it would probably be a pile of waste paper in Chen Ping's hands. The reasoning couldn't be simpler. There are more than 360 single talismans that need to be dismantled by Chen Pingan one by one. There are a lot of talisman boats in the world. This one can be called the ancestor of Fuzhou. When Jiang Shangjin was a teenager, he once asked Lao Sun a very naive question, why not make the secret teaching methods of the Patriarch Hall public, so that anyone in the sect can learn the genealogy monks? The old man just patted the young man on the head, and passed on with a sentence. When you become the master of the house one day, you will know whether you are willing or not, and whether you can or not are 2 different things. At the village school, there was another Master Jiang who said he was a substitute teacher for Mr. Qin for a period of time. I don't know what Jiang Fuzi said to a certain pungent woman when he came to the door. The next day, there was a child who dropped out of the village school and transferred to another village. Child happy very. Generally speaking, among the dozen or so village schoolboys, some liked Jiang Fuzi more, and some liked Mr. Chen more. Dao Sherding returned to Luoba Mountain alone, with a complicated expression on his face. I heard that Mr. Chen was in retreat at Fiolu. Fortunately, before the retreat, the mountain master left a message to Xiaoli, saying that when Taoist Ding returned, he asked him to come to Fiolu to discuss the Tao with him. Chen Pingan is indeed practicing his sword in retreat. The one who guards the gate is Xiago. So Xiago is becoming more and more dissatisfied with that old deaf boy now. He is squatting in the latrine and not shitting. If you don't work hard like this, you will be removed from the title of general worship. However, before the retreat this time, the mountain master said that someone would naturally be willing to replace Gon Tang to enshrine, and the preacher of Jumping Fish Mountain would still make up the number of 6 people. Is it the Taoist priest in front of me? Xiago asked. Go and return, what are you asking for? Who doesn't know how to speak politely? Taoist Ding asked in his heart, will the words of Xiao Dao and Senior disturb Mr. Chen's retreat? Xiago shook his head with a smile and said, no, the distance between 2 feet is like 2 heavens and earth. With your knowledge, you can't quarrel with our mountain master Lianjin. Taoist Ding took off his boots, sat in the corridor, his head was sunk, a little listless, and he said helplessly, now Xiao Dao can no longer distinguish between the words jade and immortal. He was on the way of Shui Tianjin's talisman boat, and he was reviewing the game with all the Taoist priests, when Taoist Ding suddenly woke up. He was in a fairyland. Where is the jade that was carefully fried by the sun and the moon? Xiago suddenly said, it seems that our mountain lord looks at you with admiration and is willing to polish you, a little bull-nosed Taoist priest. Seeing that you don't know what to do, and you don't understand yourself, I have to find a reason to let you go back to the mountain. It's a good thing, don't worry about it. With a face. The implication of Xiago's words is very simple, you don't know how to flatter, don't distinguish between good and bad, be careful to be chopped off. In the house, Master Qin Shan practiced the sword the day before yesterday, and this is the 2nd time he has been eclipsed. Last time, a shocking groove of blood was drawn out of the neck. It's amazing, not because of how exaggerated the injury is, but because of the 14 realms behind the scenes hiding in the shadows, who were able to ignore the Luobashan Mountain Protective Formation and Fiola's heavy restrictions, without revealing any clues. Just let a martial artist who is at the end of the realm and return to the true level suffer from this level of injury. The second ruthless strike directly opened a wound on the back of Qin Pingan, who was immersed in the process of sword refining, with bones visible. This made Xiago, who was in charge of guarding the gate, gnash his teeth in anger. Fortunately, Chen Pingan gave up practicing sword again. The old was still there, and he was not at all decadent. He opened the door, sat in the corridor, and chatted with Xiago for a while. Fortunately, Chen Pingan has a bird in a cage. Otherwise, halfway through the retreat, the consequences will not be small. In the lightest case, the aura of heaven and earth leaks out. In severe cases, the Tao Qi of the whole body is cleared or the Tao deeds of dozens of years are damaged. Let's just talk about the dispersal of spiritual energy. Since ancient times, it is easy to release and difficult to take back. Every spell and supernatural power cast is indeed throwing money out of the piggy bank. To separate the turbid and clear spirit between the heaven and the earth requires a qi refiner to peel off the cocoon bit by bit. It is relatively easy for those with a high realm, but for a qi refiner of the lower 5 realms, it will take countless time just for this one thing. If there is no family study or guidance from a wise teacher, no magic weapon handed down by the teacher, neither the geographical advantage of the fairy mansion dojo, and no one to be friendly with, of course, you will run into walls everywhere, and your practice will not go smoothly. Walking on a fork in the road, only talking about cultivating one natal object, genealogy monks, all have ready-made practice steps. Where can Shanzaixiu hear the Tao? Those who have been taught by masters are called true teachings. In a word, if there is no guide, you will be lost forever, and the ghosts who kill the time will hit the wall. It is not the most terrible thing, but you are afraid that you will go astray in your practice and walk on a road of no return. Dead end. Refining and scrapping a candidate natal object may be acceptable to the genealogical monks, but there are still substitutes. It is the tragic end of the avenue being cut off. Therefore, Zongzitu Dao Chang will set up at least one large formation to protect the mountain. Different Dharma lineages, each peak also has its own formation, layer by layer blessing, in order to store wind and water, gather spiritual energy, and invisibly clear the dirt between heaven and earth evil spirit. You must know that the operation of all large formations requires immortal money. As long as this expenditure is multiplied by the number of years, the amount will be very large. This leads to another crucial question, whether the mountain protection array can absorb the surrounding. If the answer is to absorb the aura of heaven and earth, then how big is the surrounding area? Almost all sects in history have different choices, and they are all doomed to avoid this question that should not be disclosed to the public. Generally speaking, two sects are more than thousands of miles apart. It is because they are afraid of offensive conflicts, just like rivers and rivers fighting each other for waterways. The choice of Luopuchen is extremely conservative. It is just to seal up the aura of heaven and earth so that it does not leak out, and does not use the method of swallowing mountains and rivers with energy, with a large formation. The Longquan sword sect, who was also in Chuzhou back then, did the same thing, but even so, due to the geographical proximity of the two sects, as the saying goes, one mountain cannot accommodate two tigers, the Longquan sword sect was still forced to move out. From the perspective of the world, Wanqiong, the chief enshrined of the Dali imperial family, had to take the initiative to give way to the young Hamid official of the Sword Chi Great Wall, and had to avoid his edge. The Tiger Weibo personally helped move the mountain, and the Song family of Dali, who was in the middle, gave Wanqiong a compensation and allocated a large piece of land in the old Beiyue boundary of Dali to Longquan Jianzong. In the eyes of other monks in Aquarius continent, all this is reasonable. There are even a lot of gossips that have a nose and an eye, saying that by chance, Chen Shanju, who encountered a changing situation, actually tried to go to a blacksmith's shop to find a place to stay when he was young, but the result was that his eyes were higher than the top. Wanqiong looked down on him in every possible way, thinking that the poor boy had no qualifications for cultivation, and he was unwilling to accept Chen Pingan as a disciple. I don't know when, Aquarius continent began to secretly poke and spread a few sayings. You can't accept disciples to Wanqiong, you can't judge the chief Wan, release the big leak Wan Jianxian. These humorous sayings were all told by Lu Xianying to Chen Pingan himself. At that time, Chen Pingan held back for a long time and asked Master Wan what he thought when he heard these statements. Lu Xianying thought about it seriously, and said Wan Taijiang was expressionless and calm. Maybe. Explain. How would Chen Pingan explain this kind of thing? Explain to Master Wan, or explain to those in Aquarius Island who spread the news. Don't let me meet you tongue-chewing face to face, be careful. Dao Sherding asked cautiously, Senior, are you very old? Xiago twitched the corner of his mouth. I slept for a long sleep, and missed many things. It can't be regarded as a real Taoist age. Why, if you are older and have a higher realm than you, I feel a little bit happier gone. Daoist Ding shook his head and said, Xiao Dao doesn't think like this, practice is his own job. Xiago followed the little Taoist's words. A Taoist, what he sees in his eyes is too focused on the things in front of him and the things at hand. What I see in my heart is at most what my future is like, and I don't care much about the world outside the human body. Taoism, at least in my opinion, is hardly a Taoist priest. It doesn't mean that you have to be a kind and good person, and you have to walk around in the world of mortals and go through one after another. It's just that now you Taoists, starting from the ancestors of Taoism, and then to the ancestors of various schools, plus those Taoist classics that can be easily flipped, all require your disciples and grandchildren to accumulate external skills, and the Taoists even propose something. 3,000 merits and the like. There are thousands of branches of the orthodoxy, each with its own ebb and flow. The rise and fall of honor and disgrace can be, since everyone looks at one thing in this way and holds the same opinion, it is naturally because of this thing that it is profitable. Do you understand the real meaning of what I want to say? Dao Sherding nodded and said, the senior understands what the senior meant. Xiago sneered and said, don't pretend you don't understand, just pretend to be stupid with me. Daoist Ding said, how dare you, thanks dog. Said, the reason why I want to chat with you a few more words is because I think you are more similar to those Taoist priests in the world, but only in relative terms. You can't imagine what it's like here. If you can hear a few words about the true teaching of Taoism from a senior cultivator, some people will ask for it. He fell down on the ground, cried bitterly, and made no secret of it. He not only worshipped the grace of the Master to preach, but also kowtowed to the virtue of nurturing heaven and earth, and even worshipped his own Taoist heart. He never felt guilty about the way he came from behind. You guys can't do it, you're not pure enough, you don't cry for real, you don't laugh for real, you have all sorts of worries, you make all sorts of calculations, you do everything as if you're doing business with someone, and you don't know it. When Daoist Ding heard this, he was in high spirits, swaying in his heart, yearning for it. Xiago glanced at the little Taoist priest, he is indeed a talent to be made. Daoist Ding thought about it for a moment, and seemed to have realized something. He raised his arm, stretched out a palm, raised it up, and shook it slightly. If there is a sage ahead who can be called a moral person, he will divide the world into yin and yang, temporarily using good and evil to forcibly name it. Deizaki district is hard to prove and not easy to get. Those who practice good ways will die young, and those who practice evil ways will be able to climb high. This is the most deceptive way to deceive the younger generations. But those who are careful to count will know that the former achieves many successes, and the latter loses more. For beginners, who dare to say that they must be the ones who have reached the top, they need to follow the former path. Those who hear the Tao first, invisibly become the guardians of the scholars behind them. If there is a separate legal system on the road, and a new door is established on the side of the road will be bigger and the road will be wider. Many people who walk on the same road can join hands going to the top of the mountain, ascending to the sky mightily. The Taoists with pure Taoism practiced a certain old site. 100 people can't do it, how about 1,000 people? Thousands of people are not enough, 10,000 people are of one mind. Our generation of Taoists can really do this, united as one. 10,000 years later, the number of people, momentum, and Tao veins are better than the battle of ascension to the sky 10,000 years ago, or broken and refined, to transform a city into a city, or to overwhelm the ruins of that court. Is it an extravagant hope? Why should the patriarchs of the three teachings worry about thousands of years? Why should they scatter? Xiago grimaced and nodded slightly. Little Taoist priests can do it. I didn't even think about it so much, so far. His mind is much better than that of Yuan Jutsai. No wonder the owner of the mountain gave him blue eyes, maybe he wanted to poach someone. That's fine, it's more than enough to enshrine Xian Yubi like a desolate mountain. A spotless and immaculate green-clothed figure, the sword fairy turned into a rainbow light, swept out of the room, his sleeves fluttered, the atmosphere was vast, and the glaze was radiant. In a blink of an eye, he had traveled more than 100 miles away from the mountains and rivers. Daoist Ding heard the sound of birds, and Mr. Chen said with a smile, "Wait a moment, go back quickly." Dao Sherding asked, "This is Mr. Chen practicing some kind of secret technique?" Xiago curled his lips. Since there is no way for the yin spirit to get out of the body, let's find a similar method. The living can't be suffocated to death by urine. Daoist Ding admired sincerely, let you be surrounded by thousands of mountains and build your own road, and you are talking about people like Mr. Chin. Xiago nodded. Little Taoist priest, you are more suitable for Luopa Mountain than the old deaf boy. Daoist Ding was shocked and said, but that old deaf senior who is one of the 10 sword immortals of the Great Wall of Sword Chi. Xiago rubbed his cheeks. The old deaf boy is so famous. On my side, I want to pretend to be a humble and respectful bird. Could it be that this ordinary priest is dishonest? Xiago remembered something. Why does our mountain lord insist on you not asking for Yushuan? Is it because you have something unspeakable and painful, so you can't ask Yushuan for advice? Daoist Ding hesitated for a moment, but still chose to speak sincerely in this matter. I like not to ask others for everything. Of course it is difficult to do so, so I will settle for the second best. At the beginning of my cultivation, I set a framework for myself. Before using it to form the alchemy, I borrowed more than 200,000 talismans from Luqing to the dojo of Taiging Fudi. I also allowed myself to pray with patriarchy once in my life to break the bottleneck of the nascent soul realm. You can bypass the inner demons, thinking about using up this opportunity before retreating to prove the way and ascending. Xiago said, that's very good. It's not about saving face. I don't ask for anything. I just ask for it cautiously. In this way, it's our mountain master dog who is meddling with mice. Daoshi Ding shook his head and said, it's senior, I misunderstood Mr. Chin, but actually Mr. Chen's intentions are deeper. Regarding my 200-year career in Taoism and cloud water, he was very positive and praised me a lot, but Mr. Chin also made a comment, which can be described as the needle hit the nail on the head and made me sweat profusely on the spot, which can benefit me for a lifetime. Xiago would not be polite to him. Let's listen to that comment. Daoshi Ding took a deep breath and said slowly, Mister, it's useless to ask others to ask for yourself. So he asked me to think about it, and one day I will be there. What should I do? What to do, what to think, turn around and look back at what the road was when this life was born. Xiago rubbed the sable hat. You are not stupid. Do you have an answer right now? Ding Daoshi said, there is no answer yet. But now I have a few fresh ideas, and I have used multiple positive and negative arguments to verify a certain final point. Xiago smiled and said, for example? Daoist Ding smiled and said, for example, the long river of time can flow backwards. When Patriarchy was filling the golden peak in Taofu Mountain, let alone begging once, I have to pack up and live outside Patriarchy's door. At least one question. Another example is that Patriarchy is outside the sky Xinghe. When I return to Yuhua Mountain, I will definitely carry a stack of amulets with me. When I go to the outer space, I can not only ask the ancestors some questions, but also overlook the world and the bright galaxy, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Xiago nodded and said, you have figured it out. It turns out that the so-called begging of our mountain master is not the same concept as the begging in your heart. Daoshi Ding nodded vigorously, and said in a deep voice, it is true, when Taoist Ding sticks to asking for help, Mr. Chin is teaching me to seek Tao. Mr. Chin taught me the word asking the heart, which is to teach me to ask. In my mind, preaching in the mountains, for high-fidelity people, it is better to teach people to fish than to teach them to fish, that's all, that's all. Xiago whispered, is there a possibility? I just said it is possible. In fact, our mountain master didn't think so much. Daoist Ding said firmly, it's absolutely impossible. Xiago is so strange, you are the Taoist priest of Lupo Mountain, but you can't do it, so you just go to Chinpingan. Seeing the playful expression on the senior's face, Daoshi Ding was stunned, and tentatively said, no way. Xiago looked embarrassed, and raised his airs to teach him a lesson. Young Taoist priest is uncertain, how dare you speak outside the Tao, our mountain master's hard work in preaching for you has been greatly discounted. Daoist Ding smiled knowingly, put his hands into his sleeves, shrunk his neck, and basked in the warm sun, Luopa Mountain is really a good place, and it has captured people's hearts without knowing it. Xiago laughed and said, I want to betray you. Getting out. Leaving Yuhua Mountain is not difficult. I take advantage of the fact that I don't need to protect the pass for the Mountain Lord, so I will take a quick trip to see Yu Xian and say a few good words for you. I will allow you to stay in Luoba Mountain to practice Taoism for decades. In the past 100 years, when you enter the Ascension Realm one day, and then return to Yuhua Mountain, then you can restore the Taoist degree and keep your status as a guest on the Luopa Mountain. Big leak. Daoist Ding said with bitterness on his face, the removal of the name from the genealogy of the Patriarch Hall is not a joke. The seniors are joking, so we must not do such a thing. Daoist Ding really can't do such activities as deviant. My body is disciplined, my heart is free, and this is the way Ding Daosher wants to walk. Xiago lazily said, a 200-year-old earth fairy is rare in our time. The little Taoist priest can stay here for a few more days and try to get acquainted with my Xiaomo. He and Luo Bao, the master of Bixiao Cave at Tan, has a very good relationship. After you prove your Dao and ascend, and you have the ability to travel to Qingming Tianxia by yourself, you only need to say that you are a Taoist friend of my Xiaomo. You can't say that. Master Bixiao has a heart. Little, easy to hear this opening sentence, he gets bored in his sleeves. You can put it another way, say that you are half of Xiaomo's junior, maybe Bixiao Cave Master will chat with you a few words about Taoism. Daosher Ding has roughly guessed the true age of this ermine hat girl. It's no wonder that you can go to Tianwai if you say that you can go to Tianwai, and you can see your ancestor Yu if you want to. No matter what you talk about, there are no taboos, and you can talk about the old master of the Taoist temple in the East China Sea, so lightly. Daoist Ding couldn't help asking curiously, the Taoist partner of the senior, is the same generation as the senior? Xiago grinned and said, the 10 heroes in the ancient world, plus 4 candidates, make a total of 14. Xiaomo and I have asked about half of them. This is the first time Daosher Ding has heard of the 10 heroes of the world. Even though it was the first time he had heard about this, Taoist Ding knew how important it was when ancient times and world were grouped together. It was really impossible to imagine the realm of those 14. Daosher Ding asked in his heart, Senior, can you tell me who they are? Xiago waved his hand, I'm right, you can't hear me. Daoist Ding asked in a roundabout way, dare to ask that boss sword fairy, is he one of the 10 heroes in the ancient world? Xiago shook his head. Chen Qingdu was only one of the candidates at the time. He didn't practice sword fast enough. He belonged to the kind of rare accumulation of accumulation, and he walked steadily with every step. Daoist Ding asked again, where is Li Xing? Xiago smiled and said, it's still one of the candidates. Daosher Ding plucked up his courage, where are the patriarchs of the 3 religions, shouldn't it be? Xiago turned his head and took a look. Daosher Ding knew he wanted to go wrong. The patriarchs of the 3 religions are among the 10 heroes. The 4 candidates for the top 10 heroes in the world are not ranked in any order. Sword cultivator Chen Qingdu, the eldest sword fairy of the Great Wall of Sword Qi. The little master Yu Ku, later Hao Ran Li Sheng, created characters and communicated with heaven and earth. Originally, Bai Zhe had the most hope of becoming the co-lord of the world's monster clan. Mr. Sanshan Zhouhou, the ancestor of Fu Zonglu, has his ashram in Taishan, one of the 5 ancient mountains. Bai Jing once witnessed the detailed scene of Mr. Sanshan Zhouhou preaching in the world. As for Chen Qingdu, at that time he was still a young man with thick eyebrows, big eyes, and a Chinese face. He was not handsome. In terms of appearance alone, he was hundreds of chin pin gone worse than the old blind man's shrine. When the battle of ascension to heaven was over, the master of Bishao Cave, who stayed in Luobayan and refused to contribute, relied on his Taoism and learned from Naji Temple, forcibly enclosing a large piece of land in the world, occupying it as his own, and refining a Taoist temple seems to be named Kaizhou. Then name the land of one state Guandao Temple. As a result, Daozu was annoyed. Xiago smiled and asked, "It is said that Yu Xian monopolizes the word talisman. Why did he Dao go to the sky?" Yu Xian's disciple and grandson, have you never thought about the reason? Dao Sherding nodded and said, "I thought about it, but I didn't think about it." Xiago said, "There is nothing I can't figure out." Naturally, Taoist priests have already occupied the road on the road. Daoist Ding pointed to the sky, and said, "The junior is puzzled. Since the senior has such a high level of Taoism and succeeded in joining the Tao early, why didn't he just go to the outer sky to refine the stars to make talismans? He did this. You juniors, don't you have nowhere to go? What are you talking about? Stuck in a tank for 10,000 years, you can't get angry." Xiago laughed and said, "I blame the heavens and the people, you are suffering to death." In fact, not only Yu Xian was able to make great strides forward because of this, even Wei Shi, who had benefited from Mr. Sanshan Zhuhao's initiative to give way in that year, was able to make a living. With a chance at the 14th realm of Hedao, it's a pity that Wei Shi, who called himself the owner of the 37th peak, did not live up to his expectations. His strength was weak, and he missed a move. Hearing Xiago's explanation, Taoist Ding suddenly realized that there are really Taoists who are willing to take the initiative to make way for future generations. There is one more high-minded person. Daoist Ding stood up, walked down the steps, and Tian Jisho paid respect to the senior Fulu who still didn't know his name and Taoist name. Xiago thought of something again, and she was very happy. The more she thought about it, the more fun she felt, and she couldn't help laughing. She was lying in the corridor, dangling her legs. Shema, go home quickly." Daoist Ding asked, "May I ask which mountain is the dojo on?" Now that he has made up his mind to stay here for more time, Daoist Ding wants to have more contact with this senior. Even if he doesn't ask about the Dharma, it would be good to ask more about the old almanac from 10,000 years ago. Xiago rolled his eyes and said, "Without a serious ashram, our Luopa mountain has never held a formal peak opening ceremony. Since Xiaoma doesn't have its own mountain, I marry a chicken as a chicken and a dog as a dog. Of course there is no. Probably the one who won this honor must be the Taoist Xianwei who guards the gate at the foot of the mountain. After that, the nascent soul realm will follow suit. Our mountain master has a heart." Ding Daosher was speechless. The old deaf son of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, the senior in front of him, and her Taoist companion. Mr. Chen's Luopa mountain, which has just acquired the title of Zongzi, seems to be a little crowded with the great monk standing on the top of this mountain. Xinwu Mountain. The sky and the earth, which were originally sunny, were obscure, as if the mountains were covered by layers of clouds and mist. Outside the mountain, a majestic Dharma figure with a green shirt and a sword on his back was walking towards the mountain. Walking to the outside of the gate archway of Xinwu Mountain, the height of the sword fairy is no different from that of ordinary people. Just like a wandering the world at night, shrinking the mountains and rivers, all laws are not limited, and the time is infinite. In the mountain there was a middle-aged patriarch who walked out of the main hall and went down the mountain to entertain the guests in person. The reunion after so many years seems to be just yesterday, and it is vivid in my memory. The meeting between the two parties is like spreading out a painting scroll that is still wet. This middle-aged man, whose appearance and temperament didn't seem to have changed in the slightest, even his attire was the same as before, with a sword on his back and an amulet hanging on his waist. He was the military monk who brought Ma Kuxuan out of the Lizhu cave, Ma Kuxuan's nominal preacher and secret guardian, and both sides had the status of master and apprentice. As if in a picture scroll of time, revisiting the old place hand in hand, the man looked around and smiled. it's so lifelike, it's hard to tell the truth from the fake. It's hard for a boy in straw sandals to survive back then. Now that I have asked Chen Jianxian from Lezhenjiang Mountain, I can say a few more words. There was no sign of turning the major issue into the minor issue. Instead, he took the initiative to uncover the wedge of that conversation back then, and Chen Pingan didn't need to remind him. In the picture scroll, the location is the immortal tomb outside the town. The man and the boy talked about his reasoning. You are not qualified to bargain. If you agree, just nod your head. If you don't agree, just keep silent. If you feel unfair and unwilling, and if you can escape from the old ape by chance, then you can go to the real town after you leave the town. Wu Shan came to me to ask for the justice you thought. There was no look of anger on the boy's face, his eyes were bright, and he just replied, if there is a chance, I will. The Ma Kushuan, who was an outsider, obviously wanted to say something at that time, but the man responded with a sentence, the dead are not qualified to speak harshly to the living. At this moment, Chen Pingan paid more attention to Ning Yao, as well as the mud-legged boy holding a short knife. No matter how you look at it, Ning Yao is a match made in heaven. Slowly retracting his gaze, Chen Ping let all the characters in the picture scroll temporarily leave the stage, with his hands wrapped around his sleeves, scattered in this fairy tomb that has not yet been converted into a temple by the Dali dynasty, and smiled. The words of the seniors back then, by intuition, can be heard come out, yes, I mean no harm. But to be honest, I didn't understand this truth at the beginning. On the subsequent journeys, I thought over and over again, chewing, and I chewed out a lot of aftertaste. The man walked aside and said frankly and honestly, at most, there is no hostility towards you. But if you want to say that there is any kindness, it's hard to talk about it. Back then, I was just afraid that when you were young, especially if you had a girl you liked watching, you would be prone to passion and impulsiveness. Before you really grew up, you would miss your future, and you stumbled here, which made you and me even deeper. A certain patriarch of Jinwu Mountain made things difficult for a junior in his own territory. This kind of thing, spread it doesn't sound good either. He did see that Chen Pingan had a fistful upper body very early on. Chen Pingan said to himself, Senior is a master of military affairs with 20% cultivation of mind and strength, so he is in the mountain and looks outside the mountain. The gods of the above 5 realms also have no malice when looking at ordinary Chen Pingan. Unless it is in the battlefield, only then will I be hostile to anyone. The fairy grave where I fought against Ma Kushuan is not the battlefield of my predecessors, so there is no murderous intent, let alone the slightest murderous intention. I don't even hesitate. If I didn't win Ma Kushuan, but Ma Kushuan is better than me, he thinks again, if you kill me painfully, the seniors will stop me in the same way. The man nodded, I will stop you from killing him, and I will stop him from killing you. Being partial to Ma Kushuan is due to the status of the mountain gate. At the same time, I will not be too partial to him. It is caused by my personal character, and I am not allowed to do things by means. Speaking of this, the man's expression became strange. He came here in a menacing manner, and brought up the old matter again. Could it be that he didn't ask the teacher for a crime, and he didn't come here to thank me, did he? Chen Pingan was still talking to himself, but I don't know if Senior has realized that Huan Shu still harbors an invisible malice without knowing it. It was the first time that Chen Pingan called him by his first name. The man restrained his smile. I would like to hear more about it and clear up my doubts. I don't know the true face of the world, only because I am in the world of mortals. Judging from his posture, Chen Jianxian wants to be courteous before fighting. However, Huan Shu found that Chen Ping just looked at him with a smile, implying to himself that since the answer lies with him, he is the one who solved the bell. However, Chen Ping's mind changed quickly. Huan Shu's seniority in Jinwu Mountain is not low. It is said that he is the younger brother of Yu Ding, the contemporary mountain lord. There is so much fog, there is not even any record of Dallas espionage, only a concise comment that this person comes from the ancestral family of the Central Plains military family. Because I have a good senior brother, and because I met the first ancestor of the military family again, Zenwishin has a spare time. It is not only a wandering mind, but also Chen Pingan chooses to forget key words and personnel affairs to imprison God's sex, often sees and hears what is the key word to open the door, and then remembers something temporarily. So what I think at this moment, there is the New Year's Eve gong wu shuangjiang, and if it is extended all the way, there is still a feeling of being caught. Wu shuangjiang cleaned up IA as the way she wants. These thoughts are like a series of catch thoughts, and the branches are overgrown, and the fire starts a prairie fire. It is completely involuntary, and Chen Ping can only think of it, and he must kill his thoughts one by one. Huan Shu suddenly said, "That's right. That's how it is." There are indeed 3 types of malicious speech. The first type, such as the malicious words in the market, is the most obvious. The second type is more subtle, and it is not used in words at all. The content and wording are focused on, but it is a class that overlooks and despises the lower and lower classes. Chen Shan's previous evaluation is still to be polite. Pingan said those words in this situation. The last one is indeed hidden and difficult to realize. Because it already comes from the one-sided world that Huan Shu lives in, and the invisible malice towards Chen Pingan's one-sided world. Both sides are in this situation. Believe that no words are needed, no one needs to speak, there is a world of difference, good and evil are self-evident. From the speaker, from the class of the speaker, from the whole world. The man kept muttering to himself, falling into a mysterious situation where people ask themselves, "The way is in me. The way is in you. The way is in the innocent blue sky, in the muddy loess." Unknowingly, when Huan Shu came back to his senses, Chen Pingan had already withdrawn the formation, and the two stood at the gate of the mountain. Chen Ping waited until Huan Shu got out of that realm, then turned around and left. Chen Pingan could even tell the difference between Ma Kushuan and Ma Lanhua. How could he not be able to tell the difference between him and Ma Kushuan, or between Ma Kushuan and Zenwishin and the preacher Huan Shu? What's more, before going down the mountain, Ma Kushuan also voluntarily broke away from the Jinwu mountain genealogy. Even Ma Kushuan, an awkward person who always likes to without wiping his ass, is willing to act abnormally. Door to him his master, Huan Shu, actually has feelings. Huan Shu asked, "Have you finished explaining Qin Shan's reasoning? Do you want to leave? Otherwise..." Huan Shu didn't talk too much back then, just a few words, a total of 84 characters. Chen Pingan asked back, "I am now in a higher realm than you, and my fist is harder than yours, so I just say a few more words, so you have to listen patiently to me, which is a total of 264 words. Take 10,000 steps back and say, don't think about it if you don't do it, don't think about it, if you want to turn over the old account, I really want to ask you for some justice." Today's Zenwishin Huanshu can give Chen Pingan. That being the case, after reminiscing about the old days, come here full of joy, and return full of joy. I never thought Huan Shu said, "Don't rush to go. The owner of the mountain is waiting for you to climb the mountain as a guest. It's not a day or two." Chen Pingan smiled, "Isn't it because you want to have a closed-door fight?" Huan Shu couldn't help laughing, shook his head, and explained, "My nephew, Shanju, wants to talk to Chen Shanju about a vulgar matter." Now it's Chen Pingan's turn to be surprised. Huan Shu's seniority is so high. Couldn't it be a certain real body who is qualified to be worshipped in the east and west of the ancestral home of the Chinese soldiers? No wonder it was this person who went to Lizhu Cave to take away the token of the military family of the 3 religions, not the current owner of Jinwu Mountain or Fengshua Temple. Huan Shu laughed and said, "What is Ma Kuxuan's temperament? You are from his hometown, so you don't know yet." If his seniority in the mountains is higher, he will be a fool. Although Aquarius continent is the smallest of the Hauran 9 continents, it is the only continent where two ancestral families of military families stand at the same time. The owner of Fengshue Temple Mountain is a sword fairy who likes to control swords. He looks like a child, with deep eyes and extremely powerful Taoism. The owner of Jinwu Mountain, named Yuding, is a man of medium stature and unremarkable appearance. Yuding appeared at the foot of the mountain, clasped his fists in salute and said with a smile, "I have met Master Qin, Master Huan's uncle." Chen Ping glanced at Huan Shu. Huan Shu glared at Yuding. Yuding knew something was wrong. It's just that he first saw his master uncle and Chen Pingan had a good chat, so he thought that there is no need to hide your real seniority. Huan Shu said, "People have already helped to bring it, so I will go to the Patriarch Hall. If there is nothing to do recently, don't bother me." Yuding saluted again. "I would like to abide by the decree of the law. Respectfully send master and uncle back to the hall to hold the lamp and add fuel." On the other side of the Shanmen archway, a young female cultivator also came. Her face and demeanor were somewhat similar to Yuding's. Chen Pingan did not move to climb the mountain and asked, "Master Yu, do you have anything to discuss?" "I need to go back to the mountain immediately to entertain guests, and I will stay soon." Yuding said, "Shanju Chen himself is a sword immortal, and he also has a descendant of Luopa Mountain, a sword Dao sect." Chen Pingan nodded and said, "Fellow Daoist Snow Ape, you have seen a lot." Yuding really couldn't bear this sentence for a while. The woman on the other side of the mountain gate couldn't help laughing. "Chen Shanju is really funny, is he just talking nonsense in such a serious manner? Now let alone Aquarius continent, it is the whole Hauran world, no one knows, who doesn't know." The young hermit not long after returning to his hometown, he created two sects one after another. If this is considered well-informed, then if I can say a few more words later, I am a pedantic heaven and man who knows all the stories about Luoba Mountain and Jinchi Great Wall. It seems that some of the rumors on the top of the mountain are true. The young hermit has been sitting in the summer palace for many years, and has accumulated a basket of flying swords, full of yin and yang. Chen Pingan didn't look sideways and turned a deaf ear. Yuding said helplessly, "Don't be rude." Chen Pingan smiled and said, "Cultivating Taoism in the mountains requires a true temperament, which is much better than making plans in your stomach. Above the etiquette of family education, just stretch your nature and let it grow naturally, which is the embryo of Taoism." Yuding smiled and nodded. The woman sighed, but she was actually older. Yuding said sternly, "Limited by natural talents and acquired academic ability, I can't be considered very good. I have been stagnant for many years at the first level of the Jade Realm. But it is not the accumulation of my own strength that can touch the bottleneck of the Jade Realm. As a result, I would like to thank the delay of a certain year of spring. With this good fortune, the speed of refining the flying sword is more than half the result with half the effort. In addition, a piece of dragon-slaying platform cut from Longji Mountain over the years, day and night, constantly sharpening the edge of the sword. Finally there are signs of retreat. Therefore, before the retreat, if Qin Shanju did not come to Jinwu Mountain as a guest, I would go to Luopa Mountain and take the initiative to talk about this with Qin Shanju to express my gratitude." Chen Pingan's expression relaxed, he was silent for a moment, nodded and said, "So that's the case. Yu Jianxian has a heart." The current main mountain of Jinwu Mountain is the top of the mountain, and its Taoist name is Snow Ape. He is both a military monk and a swordsman. It is rumored that his natal flying sword is called Huaxin Feng. There are two ways to divide Huaxin in the world, the 12-flower trade winds, or the 24 fan. The number of the former is small, but the implication is greater. The latter seems to have a larger number, but in fact it is relatively narrower than the road. According to Yu Ding's statement, the natal supernatural power of his flying sword, Hua Xinfeng, belongs to the latter. Yu Ding continued, our Jinwu Mountain is willing to take out half of the Longji Mountain sword sharpening stones to make a deal with Luopa Mountain. To be honest, Dali Longji Mountain belongs to our Jinwu Mountain's share, calculated in 10 shares, 20% of it was sent to the ancestral court of Zhongtu, 6 people including me and Uncle Huan, or it was needed for repairing the ancestral hall, or we needed to make swords by ourselves, or we needed to repay some favors on the mountain. 20% and 20% again. After discussion by Patriarch Hall, it is ready to be included in the Zenrushan treasury, and it will not be touched for the time being. Therefore, there are still 40% of the sword sharpening stones left on Longji Mountain, which have not yet been excavated. Chen Pingan immediately put his hand on Master Yu's arm, go up the mountain to chat, and talk slowly. You can take a while when you return to the mountain to entertain guests. The two sides looked at each other without saying a word. In fact, both sides are relieved. One is the unexpected joy that there is even talk about this matter. The other one was even more relieved. Master Chen Shan didn't immediately turn his face and deny him just because he had just become the Dali National Master, otherwise Chen Guosher would not have to go out in person, just ask the Dali court to send someone to ask Jinwu Mountain, Your Honor Pai sharpen the sword, is there any surplus in stone? Before discussing matters in the Patriarchal Hall, it was not that no one hesitated to suggest that it is better to mine the Dragon's Ridge Mountain as soon as possible, and then discuss it with the Zhongtu Ancestral Court and keep it on your behalf. In this way, even if he, Chen Pingan, became a national teacher, he would always. It's not easy to tear up the contract signed by Cui Chen himself. First, seal Longji Mountain immediately, and then open a big mouth with the Lion of Jinwu Mountain, asking for all the sharpening stones that have not been mined out of the mountain in time, right? Hearing this sounding good but extremely lame suggestion, Yu Ding felt powerless. Luopa Mountain is only a few steps away from Longji Mountain. Stealing, quarrying under Chen Pingan's nose, even if he can pretend to turn a blind eye now, His Majesty the Emperor of the Great Li Dynasty, would he really sit back and watch? I really wouldn't complain in my heart. It took me a long time to invite Chen Pingan out of the mountain to serve as the national teacher. Is this how Jinwu Mountain congratulated me, Dali Song? What's more, as far as Yu Ding himself is concerned, he is willing to make a long-term deal with Luopa Shan that is mutually beneficial for both public and private, and emotionally and rationally. Cheering up the stairs together with the Mountain Lord, Chen Pingan praised, the remaining 40% of Longji Mountain is given to Luopa Mountain. The spirit of Daoist Yu is already that of a fairy. Yu Ding was a little dazed. Did I say that all the sword sharpening stones should be given to Qin Shanju? The result of the previous discussion at the Patriarch Hall was to give 20% to Luopa Shan. If the new national teacher is still not satisfied, at most, he will give 10% more. Give it all. Mountain Lord Yu, you can step down as Mountain Lord. According to Chen Pingan's thinking, if he can buy 20% of the sword sharpening stone with Jinwu Mountain, it is already a worthwhile trip. Don't say it's just a visit to the mountain. Let me go to the kitchen, put on an apron and cook a few leftovers for Master Yu, no problem. How did Yu Ding know that Qin Shanju was used to being the scene of Bailuzi and the second shopkeeper? He just turned his head and looked at the female cultivator beside him, but she nodded. Father, you just said it yourself, and you will give it all. When Yu Ding heard this remark, he didn't feel any sentimentality that the female university didn't like, and he didn't feel that she was turning her arms out, but he seriously thought about it. Chen Pingan was a little curious, so he turned to look at her. He didn't follow his father's surname, it seems to be called Song Jing. Since he didn't go down the mountain to experience and rush to the battlefield, there are no records in the files of the Dali Criminal Department. I have a guess, based on Jinwu Mountain's bright side, coupled with the secret files of the Dali dynasty, the mining of Longji Mountain will not be so fast, and now only 40% of the sword sharpening stones are left. People help out, help cut the dragon tower. She smiled. Chen Yingguan, I am also a sword cultivator. I went to the Great Wall of Sword Chi secretly, but before I went, I swore an oath in the Patriarch Hall not to pass the sword, so it was a waste of time. Chen Pingan nodded, and asked with a smile, May I ask, is it a single-character flying sword? She was surprised and said, You can guess all of this, Chen Yingguan is really a god. Every one-character flying sword in the Great Wall of Sword Chi, as long as there is one holder of this kind of flying sword, it is the most important thing on the archives of the Summer Palace, and the Great Wall of Sword Chi will definitely arrange 2 or even more. Many guardians. Just like Yu Ding's natal flying sword, Flower Trade Wind, if it is not the 24 fan, but the 12 Flower Trade Wind, then Yu Ding's Kendo achievement can be even higher. In the same way, if Yu Ding's natal flying sword, is it the legendary one-character flying sword, such as Flower? The avenue is wide, as you can imagine. However, the number of such single-character flying swords in history is too rare. Even if it is recorded in the Great Wall of Sword Chi, there are only 14 in the past 10,000 years. Fijian's real name has a lot of words, but it doesn't necessarily mean that its rank is low. For example, Chen Pingan's bird in a cage and Jing Due, and Lu Jinglong's Fijian's tentative rules, are all very high. But as long as it is a single-character flying sword, it must be of extremely high rank. Because this allows the sword cultivator to not have to practice hard, cross any barriers, and practice Taoism with his heart, which is equivalent to having a natal character of a Confucian sage. Yu Ding laughed and said, her name was chosen with the help of Grand Master Jiang. The pride of the parents is beyond words. Song Jing asked, Can you guess which word it is? Chen Pingan said calmly, How do you guess? Song Jing has little regrets. Chen Pingan has already turned to discuss business with her father. Jing is the name of an ancient star. Since the name was personally given by Jiang Taigong of the Wu Temple, it naturally has a deep meaning. Since ancient times, military strategists have attached great importance to changes in celestial phenomena. It is recorded in the Book of Rites and Moon Decrees that the moon of Jichuan is in the dark arc of Kuei. Tianguan star there is a cloud in the Xiangshu, the arc 9 stars are in the southeast of the wolf, and the bow of the sky is also used to defeat and rebel Huayuan. In addition, the sages explain the characters with annotations, and the arc is the banner, so it is spread out. So what else does Song Jing need to guess about the name of that flying sword? It's just an arc. Then she used her natal flying sword to cut the long zhantai, which can not only help Jinwu Mountain to quarry stones faster, but also is a kind of sword with the best effect. No wonder she dared to express her opinion on such a major sect matter, and Yu Ding didn't think so. She is messing around. Ascending slowly on the main road of Jinwu Mountain Shinto, Yu Ding put forward 3 requirements. One is to choose an auspicious day, and Jinwu Mountain formally concludes an alliance with Luoba Mountain and Qingping Sword Sect. Second, the sword masters and martial arts masters of Jinwu Mountain can go to the 2 sects to practice, and vice versa. As for the number of people, if we can't discuss it well today, we can discuss it in detail later. 3. When Wucai Tianxia opens again, Jinwu Mountain will select 6 to 9 people, and they will go to Wucai Tianxia in the future. Under the colorful sky, I hope to stay in Feixing City for a while before going out. Longquan Jianzong and Fengshua Temple, since the Longji Mountain that belongs to them, has been exhausted long ago and has been hollowed out. The Qi practitioners who have stayed in the mountain over there for many years to practice are actually doing it. Look. According to the contract signed by the 4 parties at the beginning, any party will withdraw from the Longji Mountain boundary after mining. It's just that Wanqiong and Fengshua Temple have their own tacit understanding, each has its own worries and considerations. In short, neither of them has truthfully reported to the Dali court, even if Shinwu Mountain is aware of it. There is no need to please Dolly on this matter. The Li Song family had a bad relationship with Longquan Jianzong and Fengshua Temple. So once the agreement between Jinwu Mountain and Luopa Mountain is reached today, then even if the Dragon's Ridge Mountain was completely taken over by Luopa Mountain. Going round and round, in the past years, I wanted to ask for it but couldn't find it. This mountain finally belongs to me, Qin Pingan. For the previous two conditions, which were not conditions, Qin Pingan of course agreed without any hesitation, but for the third point, Qin Pingan said that he had to discuss it with Feishing City first. Looking at the young hermit official who started talking nonsense in a serious manner again, Song Jing had a hard time holding back her laughter. Who doesn't know that at the summer palace in Feishing City, Ning Yao is just helping someone to take up the post of hidden official? Then who did you Qin Ping discuss with, and where did you discuss with your wife? But to be honest, even Qin Pingan's mother's family, Aquarius Island, when talking about his Taoist partner, always said that Qin Pingan had climbed to Ningyao, and if he really wanted to become a Taoist couple, she was married. Song Jing just didn't think so. She had nothing to do with her, and she didn't want to be married. The two of them were a perfect match, as if made by God. Chen Ping opened a shop in the Great Wall of Sword Qi, and Chen Ping just drank some wine and went home late, so Ning Yao was willing to close the shop. All nonsense. I don't know if it was an illusion, but Song Jing noticed that Chen Pingan turned his head and looked at him again, with a kind smile, like an elder looking at his nephew, comfortable and kind. Yu Ding quickened his pace intentionally or unintentionally, and happened to get in between the two of them. Qin Shanju, let's talk about business and business. You must not be the protagonist of that certain book of landscape travel. Now that the agreement has been roughly settled, Qin Pingan will rush back to Fiolu, and Yu Ding has no intention of keeping him. Strange, weird, just like guarding against thieves. Qin Pingan was at a loss. A grain of mustard seed transformed into the Dharma form, Yufeng Daowu returned to the Fiola Taoist temple. Qin Pingan opened the door and walked out of the room, probably because he was in a good mood, with his sleeves fluttering. It is rare for Qin Shanju, who has always walked calmly, to show such a heroic pace and arrogance. It was just a one-liner with Taoist Na Ding, which almost made Taoist Ding have to make a formula to stabilize his heart. Fellow Taoist, I just realized a method of ascension that can be called a master at a young level. Do you want to learn it? Dare to learn it? As soon as this question came out, there was silence. It's so cold. Qin Jianxian was in high spirits, while Ding Daosher was dumbfounded. Xiago was the first to break the silence, and asked in a low voice, Shanju, are you drunk? A conscientious music editor jumped out of nowhere, squatted there, spread out a blank booklet, and was about to write down the matter. There is that chapter title. Chen Junkai has entered the fairyland, but he can teach the method of ascension. Sort of coming chapter 11:10. It's very strange that Qin Pingan, who was so arrogant, just asked Taoist Ding some common sense that can't be learned. When did fellow Taoists start Bigu? Before that, the 3 meals a day were irregular. On the way to practice, when did you enter a certain realm? Do you still remember the specific year, month, and day? Condition. Not to mention Taoist Ding falling into the clouds, even Xiago didn't bother to pretend to understand. She really didn't understand what the mountain master was thinking. I really want to spread the word to save people, and teach a so-called ascension method. If you, Qin Pingan, find another way, it will be so rustic, right? The score editor recorded them one by one in the book. No matter how much the white-haired boy admired the ancestor Ingguan, he couldn't help but swear in his heart. It's good that she got the title for this chapter, but the content is too clear. A little water. Qin Pingan asked a lot of vulgar details, and finally asked, Dao Yu Ding, have you thought it over yet? Taoist Ding was a sincere person, and asked back, with this method of ascension, why doesn't Mr. Chen practice it himself? The white-haired boy chicken pecking at the side is a good question. Chen Ping smiled and said, I need to watch and protect the way. Xiago gave the mountain master a thumbs up. Words and deeds are the same, treat people with sincerity. Ding Daosher said, think it over, take a gamble. Chen Pingon squinted his eyes and smiled. You stay here first, practice as usual for a few days, remember not to be nervous, just keep everything as usual, and do whatever you want. After that, I will partner with fellow Taoists to be a dealer. Ding Daosher took a deep breath. He heard Xiago groan, and reminded, what's the matter with the little Taoist priest? I forgot it as soon as I said it, and it's not enough to focus on it. Chen Ping went to the sword worship platform, and personally carved a book collection seal for Bai Xian, congratulating him on his successful breakthrough. The printed text reads, floating clouds take the mountains to swim in the blue sky, and the name of the kid's flying sword is Yunyu. Chen Pingon said, on the other side of Zhenwu Mountain, I met a sword cultivator with a single-character flying sword. The old deaf child laughed and said, rare, really rare. Bai Xian asked curiously, Master Chow, single-character flying sword. What do you mean? The old deaf son explained, for example, the titles of princes are also divided into levels, most of which are two-character titles. For example, Songmu, the king of Luo in the capital of Dali, is the so-called one-character side-by-side king in the novel, which is better than the two-character title. A king is worth more. Bai Xian wondered, don't Zhong Yuan have a natal flying sword, the name is 4 characters, isn't it also very strong and unreasonable? The old deaf boy laughed and said, when we talk about things, let's talk about common sense first, and then talk about special cases. For example, the old deaf child once saw a single-character flying sword. The old deaf boy hesitated for a moment, and asked, my lord, does the summer resort have any statistics? Chen Pingon nodded and said, there are only 14 that have been recorded. The old deaf son said, it's a pity. There are 2 meanings. One is that it's a pity that the masters of these natal flying swords seem to be the highest level, and they are also sword immortals. No one can successfully enter the Ascension realm. The second is some natal flying swords with single-character flying sword qualifications, their masters' people, died too early in battle, fell too fast, or did not have time to improve their rank, or did not have time to break through certain restrictions, and failed to have supernatural powers without hindrance, and successfully entered the single-word flying sword. The old deaf boy asked, could it be? Chen Pingon said, like the number of monks in the 14th realm, there should be more and more sword cultivators with single-word flying swords. The old deaf boy frowned, and sighed, the sun and the moon are gone, and the years are not with me. Chen Pingon remained silent. From last year to now, Chen Pingon has been worried about Fuyao Island. After returning to Haoran Tianxia, the foreign sword cultivators in the summer resort had only seen Lin Junbai and Deng Liang. There is an extra Xiaomo by my side, and after I am completely relieved of Xiaomo, another Xiago comes, and after I am relieved of Xiago, Xiaomo goes to Qingming Tianxia, and I need to retreat again, so Xiago helps to protect the customs. Xiago seemed to see the worry of the mountain master, and said with a smile, I sneaked over to Fuyao Island before, and it's okay. If you're really worried, let Gong Tang go over there and keep an eye on it. Yes, he was idle anyway. What? The old deaf boy's heart tightened. Going to work again. Old people who have seen the old mountains and rivers, but can't see the shocking new mountains and rivers, and can't hear such words as the spring grass and trees in the city, the old people are easy to be heartbroken. In the world of Haoran, after a battle is fought, the most tragic battle is actually Fuyazu, not one of them. Of course, the Aquarius continent was also very tragic, but the Dali Song clan at least kept the mountains and rivers of Banzhou. Tonggishao. Apart from the few sects on the mountain, how many battles have been fought down the mountain. Therefore, on the territory of Fuyazu, various places have been restored one after another, and they are all adopting brand new names of the first year. It has only been 3 years since the Jinpu dynasty restored Guizhou. At the end of last winter, Jingxiandu was built in Luanjiaden. In the night of this day, sword lights flashed in a ferry inn at the ferry, all in the same direction, all heading towards Xuanjiao. Mountain rushed. Brilliant sword lights pierced the night sky, dragging fireflies in the air, which was extremely eye-catching along the way. Just the famous sword immortals who can be recognized at a glance include Aizhao Xie Songhua, Jinjiazu Songpin, Lixiazi Yue, Puha, and Situ Jiyu. In addition, there are several well-known old sword immortals in the nascent Soul realm, who are now well-deserved big shots in the 3 continents of Hauran Northwest where many great cultivators have fallen. And beside these sword fairies, there are also a group of young people who are skilled in controlling swords, so young that they are eye-catching. Apart from sword cultivators, I am afraid that there will never be another kind of chi trainer in the world who can make others feel that the word young has such weight. The purpose of meeting this time is not to make money, nor to go into troubled waters, but to prevent someone from destroying the mind veins with secret methods, which will affect the entire Fuyao continent, causing the surrounding 10 countries to suddenly. Lu Chen. Situ Jiyu asked, that vein of temporarily unknown material, is it really possible to become a brand new kind of fairy money? Except for snowflakes, xiaoshu, and Guyu coins, these 3 kinds of mountain fairy coins are not without jade with natural aura in history. Mine pits appeared, but in the end it turned out that because the jade stones were not pure enough and the aura was not evenly distributed, they couldn't do it, and they couldn't reach the level of casting a standard coin. After all, if every piece of money cannot be equivalent, how can it be circulated? Furthermore, the ultimate reserves of those jade types are also a big problem. Therefore, those or veins are at most occupied, mined and tempered by one or several sects jointly, and become the basic materials for refining spiritual weapons and magic weapons on the mountain, or they are made to cost some money. With Xiazong, the latter's duty is to guard the mountain. In fact, Situ Jiyu, as a swordsman in the Jade Royal realm, has practiced since he was young, and has no worries about food and clothing. He doesn't care about making money. He just feels that the atmosphere is dull and boring, so he just throws out a topic to chat a few words. In the end, no one spoke to him at all, and Situ Jiyu was bored. In another place, a Jade Realm sword immortal took the initiative to start a conversation, and immediately followed up without a few words of flattery, which was simply outrageous. Situ Jiyu's biggest knot now is that he failed to take away 1 or 2 children from the Great Wall of Sword Chi and accept them as disciples. So looking at the younger ones in the team, Situ Jiyu liked everyone. Looking at those old people again, Situ Jiyu saw that everyone was an eyesore. It's strange, and I have to blame the young hermit for not treating himself as the best kind of friend. The drinks were all for nothing. Xie Songhua, a female sword fairy in Aizhao, once cooperated with a young hermit to kill the monster clan in Yupu realm. Because the beast is a sword repairer, it is more valuable and has extraordinary military exploits. In the Great Wall of Sword Chi, she didn't pass the sword many times, but she had great military exploits. According to the rules of the Great Wall of Sword Chi, it is equivalent to beheading an immortal monster. Because he is not good at making money, and sword repair is the most money-consuming profession, he is alone, and there is always a way to make a fortune, but since he has accepted 2 disciples, Xie Songhua has become an enshrinement of the Lu family of Ieyasu. If you want to blame, you can blame the money given by Lu Kaishin, it is too much. Situ Jiyu held back for a long time, and finally couldn't help but said, Xie Songhua, why are you willing to be an offering to others? Who can't learn from Yu? That Yu has a bunch of enshrinements and titles of guest ministers, and he just lays down and collects money every year. It's no wonder that he can't do a good job with his sword skills. C.S. Songhua said unhappily, "My old lady has enough backbone without asking whether Lu Kaishin is willing to take a concubine." Yu Yu said helplessly, "What do you do with me?" Situ Jiu sneered and said, "According to the merits of battle, you have to hold the sword under my feet." Yu Yu laughed. "Pooh," he poohed, "the two chicks are pecking at each other." C.S. Songhua laughed and said, "3 chicken cubs in one cage." Pooh, he thought about it in pieces, but he didn't dare to make a sound. He and Situ Jiu have exactly the same experience, brothers and sisters. One is a genealogy monk who is better than Yeshio, and the other is the patriarch who used to be the head of the immortal mansion of Shenzhou Zone in Central Earth. Because of an accident, he lost his life. Genealogy status, became a field repairer. They all felt that they wanted to learn the sword skills of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, and then they all stayed at the Great Wall of Sword Qi, by virtue of their ability. They all made meritorious deeds by killing demons in foreign lands, and they were all relatives with the summer resort, which can be regarded as giving the hermit official a line of sword cultivation. I have done my best to help. Now that I have returned to Haoran Tianxia, I have ridiculed you in every possible way, and feel that Yu Yu is not worthy to be named enshrined in the Lost Mountain. Song Pin Yujian, who doesn't like words, is in the sky, and the wind blows the black hair on his temples, fluttering like a goddess. Jinjiazu female sword fairy Song Pin, and Lixiazu Puha, these two, neighbors, sword fairy, both showed up at Chunfan Zhai in Daoxian Mountain back then. Before that, they actually had no intersection with the young hermit. As for the foreign female sword cultivators who appeared on the Great Wall of Sword Qi, their sword styles were almost carved out of the same mold. Whether it was C.S. Songhua, Song Pin, or Li Kai, they were extremely decisive and ruthless on the battlefield. Before going to the Great Wall of Sword Qi, Situ Jiu, who lived between Jinjiazu and Lixiazu as a field repairer, was the only regular customer of a certain wine shop in the Great Wall of Sword Qi among several Haoran sword immortals back then, and he liked to squat on the road while drinking, eat a bowl of yangchan noodles. If we really want to talk about the accumulated military exploits, in fact Situ Jiu is only slightly inferior to Song Pin, not losing to Puha at all, but the only thing he lost was when Puha fell across the border, so that he was scolded by Pu Lauer as fishing. Situ Jiu doesn't even know how why talk back. That is, the hermit is not present. Otherwise Chen Pingon has no reason not to favor him based on his personal friendship with the young hermit. Although everyone is a wine trustee, is it true that the wine trustee no distinction between 3, 6, 9, etc.? Situ Jiu and the long-bearded immortal lord of the great Longqiu of the Zhongtu sect, and Situ Mengjing who went to Xiaolongqiu of Tonggizhao to be the owner of some kind of mountain, are probably close relatives. Not long ago, I received a secret letter, in which Situ Mengjing gave a general account of Xiaolongqiu's misfortune, and when it came to the young hermit official, Situ Mengjing gave a high evaluation. There is no false reputation under the reputation. This mine, which claims to be able to make the fourth kind of fairy money on the mountain, and then attracts the coveted forces of all parties, is located in the deepest part of the ground, like a labyrinth. They died in the war. There were a few genealogy monks who claimed to be the descendants of the patriarch Hole. They had been complaining to the Jin Pu dynasty for the past 2 years. However, the Ministry of Punishment teamed up with the Academy to investigate carefully and found that they were just a few swindlers. Straight up then go to prison. The earliest discovery of this vein was due to the changes in the heaven and earth in Haoran. There was a monk who was similar to the Art of Hope. The blue color hovers around, like a huge Ganoderma lucidum. He feels that there might be a priceless treasure that is about to appear in the world, so he plucks up the courage to go into the cave to find out. As a result, he goes deeper and deeper, and finally he sees a scene at the end of the road. This sea-observing Qi practitioner was stunned. In the vast and extremely empty huge cave, there is a dark vein of unknown material, like jade and stone, like a black dragon crawling on the ground, and the body, and the cave, the stone walls are connected, just like being the mountain is generally imprisoned, so it is impossible to imagine how long this mountain range is. The old monk tried all his methods, but he couldn't chop, smash, or figure out anything from the black dragon's body. He spent a lot of spiritual energy and talismans in vain. What's the end? After much deliberation, the old monk didn't dare, let alone divulge the news, so he had to retreat, and found a few good friends on the mountain who he could trust, and came here together to get the treasure. With all his strength, he only cut off a piece of black jade the size of a palm, which was not enough to temper and repair the capital of the flying sword of life. No one is reconciled, but everyone wants to. There is no one-size-fits-all solution. In the end, they came up with a solution that was not a solution, and the brothers should stop forming an alliance, and just set up a faction here. We must guard this inexhaustible treasure. In other words, this is the foundation of a future sect, and it can even be bigger. How did the Iazhao Lu family make their fortunes back then? Isn't it because of that snowflake money vein? It's a pity that there is no impenetrable wall in the world. Immediately outside the gate of Chuanjiao Mountain, a family ferry was built, and there were many shops, noisy, and everything was sold in the market, not to mention restaurants. There were also brothels. As for all kinds of panaceas, magic robes and weapons, and rare antiques, there are countless, and there are even wedding shops and funeral shops selling coffins. There are people who come here to inquire about information and money for their respective behind-the-scenes forces, and those who are pure, those who go out to relax and enjoy the mountains and rivers, and those who want to fish in troubled waters, have a date or not. The Jinpu dynasty, which had just restored the state a few years ago, temporarily opened up a relatively stable underground passage, which was just enough to allow 2 ferries to go back and forth at the same time. Half of the national treasury savings were emptied, but the household department was pleasantly surprised to find that with a ferry, it would soon be able to recover the money. Now inside and outside, the 3 religions and 9 streams are mixed, and there have been many conflicts in the open and in the dark, and there have been 7 or 8 conflicts where people were killed, not to mention those who were secretly destroyed. Jinpu, who had just returned to the country, the dynasty couldn't control it at all. During this period, at the beginning, they wanted to establish their prestige, and wanted to kill chickens and monkeys, so they took the lives of several royal family priests. They didn't know how they died, and their bodies were never found. As for chi practitioners picking quarrels, brawls and fighting in secret, it's not easy to call in a large group of local snakes from this continent, or cross-river dragons from other continents, causing the muddy water to become more and more muddy. Just talking about the local monks in Fuyao continent, there are as many as 7 or 8 allied forces, large and small, stationed in various places in the cave that are as big as towns. As for these temporary gangs that are on the surface, God knows whether there is support from the other continent's sect behind them. Just talking about the rich and powerful Lu family in Iazhao, there is almost no Qinggong Mountain in Lixiaozu, and the Tianyu Cave. Can you not get involved? Is it really just watching from afar? The problem is that the Zhongti Confucian Temple has a delicate attitude towards this matter. Although the Confucian Temple has always adhered to the purpose of not competing with monks for profit, if the Confucian Temple really wants to come to the Academy Mountain leader, just put it down and say that all the mines belong to the Confucian Temple, but it's easy, everyone will give up that heart. If the Confucian Temple behaves like this, it will definitely attract complaints, but at most it is a matter of daring to be angry and dare not speak out. First of all, if it is going to fight against the wild world, the Confucian Temple must be short of money, and it is reasonable to take it from the world and use it for the world. Moreover, the Confucian Temple is now acting vigorously and resolutely, which is quite different from before. It has established a rule that anyone who dares to break the ban will go to the local academy in Izhou to read the books of sages. In the words of Wen Yu, who is now the deputy head of Tianmu Academy in Tonggizhou, he said, "Make up for the truth, don't think it's too late to study. If the Qi practitioner commits a serious crime, he can go directly to the Gongda forest. Maybe he is lucky and can see that savage Lu Chao. Since the Zhongta Confucian temple did not express its position, the Jinpu dynasty could not control the situation, and the top sects in Biezhou who were sitting on the top of the hill in the Ascension realm were hiding one by one. No one dared to be the first bird. This makes this place even more strange, treacherous, undercurrent surging. Xie Songhua was neatly dressed and carried a bamboo box on her back. Her two disciples, Zhu Xing and Chao Mu, who used to be children, are now teenagers. One carries a bamboo box and the other holds a walking stick. Although her hometown is Ai Island, she has a very bad impression of Ai Island. She had a mediocre impression of Lu Kaixin, who is the best earner in the world, in her early years. Wandering, living in clouds and waters, after forming alchemy, he traveled more in Jinjiazu and Luxiazu. In the early years, she fought against Situjiu, a small misunderstanding, but at that time, the two wild cultivators concealed their identities and suppressed their realm. No one laid a dead hand on the other side. Later, at the Great Wall of Sword Qi, while drinking at the same table, I accidentally chatted about old things, and after checking the accounts, I realized that it was the other party. And now there is a gossip that Xie Songhua is very likely to enter the fairyland in just a few decades. So before she unexpectedly agreed to become an enshrinement to the Lu family of Aiazhao, which caused quite a stir. Because an old man of high seniority in the Liu's ancestral hall of Aiazhao has invited Xie Songhua many times to be a guest minister, even if it is just a named guest minister. As a result, the impatient Xie Songhua replied directly, which was like saying, "Thank you very much, the old thing is tired of living, you are asking for a sword." But in the end, Xie Songhua actually served as a named enshrinement directly, and she was not even a guest. Now Xie Songhua's two direct disciples, Juxing and Chaomu, before they enter the upper five realms, all expenses, from the heavenly materials and earthly treasures needed for sword refining, additional natal items, to basic necessities, food, housing and transportation, the Lu family of Aiazhao it's all round. When the outside world heard about this, they couldn't help feeling sincerely, a little money on the mountain is nothing, but the Lu family who has money like Aiazhao really counts. Everything. In a huge underground karst cave tentatively named Feng Shui Cave, a private house located at the highest point was carved out of walls, with pavilions, terraces and attics suspended in the air. And on the bank of the underground river, the mansions on both sides stretched, the lights were like daytime, singing, and there was a lot of people's voices all day long, just like a fire dragon. In this high-hanging mansion, in a plainly decorated waiting room, 3 young sword cultivators have been waiting here for a long time, chatting while waiting for someone. It's the 3 young golden core sword cultivators, almost all of them are weak crowns, and they haven't reached their 30s yet. The 3 are Song Gaoyuan, Scrofularii, and Chao Gun. They are all first-class cultivating geniuses, well-deserved Toshihiko on the mountain. The state, appearance, bearing, intelligence, life experience and teacher's biography are all top-notch. Especially that Chao Dun, who has a particularly brilliant appearance, wearing a purple gold crown on his head, a blue robe, and a white jade flute pinned to his waist. He is a handsome young man. They didn't rush to the gate of the house early to greet them, they just stood up and clasped their fists at this moment, without any red tape. Even if I see all the senior sword cultivators at this moment, there are no polite words like seeing a certain sword fairy. This scene really made those old people who had never been to the Great Wall of Sword Qi feel extremely embarrassed, and sighed in their hearts. They are indeed young people who have been to the Great Wall of Sword Qi. But even Puha and Situ Jiu, who are known for their bad tempers, didn't think there was anything wrong. Previously at the Jinxiandaku Inn, the group of familiar swordsmen were cursing and tearing each other down, but now, they all seemed to be participating in the discussion of the patriarch's hall, very well behaved. Especially that old man Pooh, who is recognized on the mountain as, which little child doesn't follow the rules, and lacks etiquette with the old man, so he will teach you how to behave for your parents and master. At this moment, he was not fooling around, but looked solemn. Just before crossing the threshold, he saw a few junior sword cultivators in the room who were only at the Jindan stage, and the old man took the initiative to clasp his fists. Song Gaoyuan was born in Fuyezhou Antler Palace. As long as he enters the upper 5 realms in the future, he will be the candidate for the palace master without any suspense. Firstly, Song Gaoyuan was born as a fairy material, on the mountain, and his parents were a pair of Taoist couples, both of whom were direct descendants of the contemporary suzerain of the Antler Palace. Furthermore, the respected ancestor of Rongguan had always held Song Gaoyuan in the highest regard. Scrofulariaceae comes from the ethereal school of Jinjiazu, the epiphyllum peak of the master's ancestor mountain. Every time after the rain, it has the reputation of, the dragon comes out of the cave, the cloud is yellow and the sky is purple. The cyan-purple book titled The River Yu Yingling Collection. The ancestor died in battle. He was the first native immortal in Fuyao continent to die in battle. The Yingyue River at the foot of the Moon Worship Mountain and the flower-sweeping pavilion at the Lianri Peak are adjacent to each other. It was once a holy place in the hearts of monks born in Izhou. It is also the one that enshrines Keqing and Yaozu monks in the Zongmen Patriarch Hall besides Taishu Mountain in Zhongtu in Haoran World. In the tragic battle that swept across the continent, these genealogical monks who were born in the local monster clan of Fuyao continent followed Yuan Qingyao to the battlefield, and most of them died in the battle. These 2 top sects were destroyed in the war and are now being rebuilt. Chao Gun was born in Lixiazhua's square-inch sect, and is famous for his ability to refine square-inch objects, but the requirements for accepting apprentices are high, and the number of genealogy monks is very small. There are dry rocks standing on the top of the mountain, higher than the peaks. On the dry rocks and cliffs, there are 2 big characters in the seal, which are said to be written by Bai Yi himself, mending the sky. The founder of the mountain opened up a study here, the Changshangshe, which became the private dojo of the suzerains of all dynasties and was passed down from generation to generation. The previous suzerain was the second person on the mountain in Lixiazu, second only to Qinggong Taibao Jinghao, and his ranking must be ahead of the Tianyu cave master. The reason why he took office was that the old suzerain was one of the very few great monks who took the initiative to rush to the Jinjiazu battlefield. Not long after returning to the sect, he declared to the outside world that he was retreating, but in fact he passed away. Now Fangkunzong has already established the next sect in Fuyezhou. It is said that Chao Gun, who is only in the Jindan realm, has the hope of obtaining the permission of the Zhongtu Confucian Temple by virtue of his military exploits accumulated in a foreign land, and he will be the master of the next sect. But these are no excuses. There is only one real reason. These 3 young people who returned to their hometown, Tianxia, came from the lineage of hidden officials in the summer palace of the Great Wall of Sword Qi. And as a hidden officially sword cultivator, he has been to the battlefield. Among this group of sword cultivators, apart from those boys and girls who are disciples, there is actually a difference between superior and inferior. For example, among them, Xie Songhua, who is recognized as having the greatest military exploits and once personally killed a Jade Realm sword cultivator monster clan, may not be able to appreciate the accumulation of military exploits. Not as good as his own Song Pin. Song Pin definitely looked down on Pu He. Pu He, who fell through the Great Wall of Sword Qi, looked down on Situ Jiu, who had never fallen, but only fished everywhere. Yu Yu, who has been to the Great Wall of Sword Qi but has done nothing, Yu Yu looks down on those who have never been to the Great Wall of Sword Qi, the old sword repairmen who have never been to the Great Wall of Sword Qi, and those who have never been to the Hanging Mountain. Look down on them again. I have been to the Hanging Mountain, but I have never been to the nearby. The Great Wall of Sword Chi is within walking distance. Reason. The truth is on the battlefield of the Great Wall of Sword Chi. There are 2 rows of seats in the hall. Jinsho, who is from the Great Wall of Sword Chi, sits on one side, and those who have never been there sit in the other row. It may be to take care of the latter's mood, or it may be to avoid the disparity in the number of people between the 2 parties, or to facilitate face-to-face discussions. The 3 of Chao Gun sat opposite Xie Songhua and the others, and in front of the 7 immortal sword cultivators. The girl Chao Mu has 2 flying swords, Pang Tuo and Hongni, and their ranks are Yixia and Bingshang respectively. Classes A, B, and C, each with 3 ranks of upper, middle, and lower, totaling 9 ranks. In fact, if they can be rated, even if they are ranked in B and C, they are considered good natal flying swords. And this selection from the Summer Palace is more about considering and taking care of the battle on the battlefield, and it is not suitable for catching swords between sword repairers. Back then, there were 16 sword cultivators in the Great Wall of Sword Chi and the Old Summer Resort, and there were 6 sword cultivators from other villages. In addition to Chen Pingan, who was the last hermit official, there were also Lin Junbai, Deng Liang, Chao Gun, Scrofularii, and Song Gaoyuan. At that time, Lin Junbai was the first one among the foreign sword cultivators to leave the Summer Palace and return to the Shaoyuan dynasty in Shenzhou, China. It didn't take long before Lin Junbai became the national teacher and became the youngest national teacher among the 10 great dynasties of Haoran. Deng Liang from Juda Mountain in Aiazhou arrived in Feishing City in the 7th year of Jiachuan in the colorful world. When he left Daoxian Mountain, he was still in the nascent Soul realm, and finally entered the upper 5 realm in a foreign land. Chao Gun, Scrofularii, and Song Gaoyuan each returned to their hometowns and returned to the sect. The 3 young swordsmen each had new encounters. The 3 of them were relatively close neighbors, and they were all in the 3 continents west of Haoran. Close. Although the Shinin official lineage sword cultivator of Feishing City has retained a considerable part of the old man, compared to the previous generation, it seems that the overall is still quite inferior. After all, Mi Dajiangxian, who is the hands-on man, is no longer in the new summer resort. Chao Gun once said something from the bottom of his heart: as long as I walk out of the summer palace alive one day, I don't want to read another book in my life. And after they left the Great Wall of Sword Chi, from their own reticence to the silence of their respective sects, it seemed that they were intentionally or unintentionally downplaying the trip to the Great Wall of Sword Chi. In the Summer Palace, there was almost internal strife, and they were almost about to question each other's swords. Once they really did, it is estimated that the local swordsmen and the foreign swordsmen would be completely divided. For example, Su Ning once scolded all 18 generations of Scrofularii's ancestors. In a scolding war, almost everyone has a share, everyone scolds, and everyone is scolded. Except for the 3 of them who didn't speak, the young Yingguan sat firmly on the Diayutai, the sword fairy of Sorrow Miao also held his breath, and there was Guazhuzhou who silently recorded every swear word, and learned it. In fact, Lin Junbai is the most pitiful. He wanted to be that messy peacemaker, but Dong Bu finally seized the opportunity, and scolded Lin Junbai again. In the end, it was Chen Pingan and Xiao Miao who joined forces to keep the situation from getting worse. In the past, he was a hermit official in the Summer Palace. All sword cultivators have been to the battlefield, and many times. Everyone was wounded, but only one died. Jinsho is worried about seedlings. This local swordsman has a high realm, good aptitude, has a big picture, a stable temperament, a thoughtful mind, and almost never gets angry. There are too many advantages of Shumiao. Even Lin Junbai, who is as proud and arrogant as Lin Junbai, willingly admits that sword fairy Chou Miao is the best candidate to succeed the hermit official, and that he is indeed not as good as Chou Miao. The first sentence that Chao Gun spoke today was very scary. We must assume that there is a great Ascension Realm monster hidden here. Scrofulariaceae added, it has the strength of the great demon of the wild old throne. Chao Gun and the three of them are all handsome young men of Fengshan Yulang now, but Chao Gun is a little special. His words have a strong local accent, soft and waxy gentle, often popping out some dialects. What kind of chewing? Whoops, show yep. This was always a topic in the summer palace back then. Dongbu and Guozhujiu especially liked to imitate Chao Gun's speech. Chao Dun's skin is fair and tender, and his face often turns red when they tease him. It's no wonder that when Lord Ingguan suggested that they go out to fight in the city, it's better to be careful, it's better for women to disguise themselves as men. As for men, the same is true. At that time, Lord Yingguan's eyes were mainly on Lin Junbai and Chao Gun. Hearing that he might have to face a big monster with the same killing power as the old throne, Song Pin is of course nothing. The faces of the young golden core sword cultivators behind Chao Gun inevitably changed slightly, but they soon returned to normal, with a few firm eyes. There is a woman among them. Her eyes are even hot. She looks like a master who is not afraid of troubles and prefers to make troubles. It is estimated that her master of the sect has a lot to worry about. Song Gaoyuan said, there is a high probability that this will not be the case. If there is a big monster in the Ascension Realm, the Confucian Temple will not sit idly by. It is more likely that there is a fairyland monster who is good at disguising and concealing energy, and is proficient in formations. Always hide. I couldn't bear it. I wanted to make waves here, and take the opportunity to plan some big event. Let me just give you an example. At least some of the steps of setting up and starting the formation require certain unknown prerequisites. Chao Gun laughed and said, for example, this mineral vein is a fishing rod, then we are the bait and the hook, and the big fish that is temporarily unknown where it is hidden. It is entirely possible that it will not bite the hook and just eat the bait. So I hope everyone here is doing well. Worst plans. Scrofulariaceae stood up, took out 3 scrolls from his sleeve, threw them to a high place, and 3 maps of the situation were hung side by side in the lobby, and each map was densely packed with marks and text annotations. Before you came, the 3 of us had a thorough investigation of the inside and outside of Chuanzhou Mountain. The dragon veins outside, the internal structure, and the distribution of various forces have all been roughly checked. But it was relatively hasty, so it was really rough. Regarding the hidden backers of those superficial forces, the extended network map, their intersection, and whether they may be connected with each other, there are clear records on the situation map, which are for reference only. At the same time, I hope you will not be misled by us, but it is all the content written in red text above. You need to pay extra attention. There must be nothing wrong. The best result is that there is no plan of the wild monster race here. Our trip to Chuanzhou Mountain is really just a trip. But it is unlikely. Compromise. This monster does exist, but it doesn't have the courage and strength to fight to the death. It only has the means to hide in the dark and disrupt the situation. Don't be idle, go out and walk more, try to conceal your identity, and don't worry about whether you will startle the snake. The more carefully the formation is arranged, the more it is interlocking. We are like fish hitting the net. Pulling too much, it is possible to find clues. If it is assumed that the Confucian Temple also sends people to watch here, the number of people will definitely not be too many, and it may not be useful if there are too many. They do things, no matter how cheap they are still not unruly and wild enough. So we need to help check for omissions and fill vacancies. If we were the planners of the Jiazi account, we would definitely let one or a few smart enough cheap practitioners stay here. For them, surely give them amulets. If it were the dead soldiers left here by the wild world, they would definitely pay special attention to the sages and gentlemen of the Confucian Temple, and would carefully avoid them if they had any doubts. The 3 of us all used a substitute talisman made by Yuhua Mountain. Our real bodies are not here, and we have changed our identities and hid somewhere outside. The realm is not high, so we can only rely on hard work to make up for it. Speaking of this, Chao Gun looked at Sitijiu, who had been to the upper 5 realms of the Great Wall of Sword Chi, and their natal flying swords and their respective magical powers would be secretly recorded in the Summer Palace. Sitijiu laughed in his heart. Song Pin, Pu He, and I have each quietly sacrificed a natal flying sword and cooperated with each other. Until this moment, we can be sure to use our spiritual sense to explore this place, or use our palm observation. There are a total of 6 places for Qi trainers in the Shanha method, and they can be found out immediately. There are 4 unobtrusive creatures, and the other 2 are hidden relatively deep, but the area is small, so they are easy to find. Assuming they are wild beasts, can we instantly killing in time? You have to try it to know. While speaking, Situjiu reached out and pointed at one of the situation pictures, and circled 6 places. Xie Songhua laughed. As long as you find her exact whereabouts, killing an immortal is not easy, but it's not that difficult. To take a step back, as long as she was injured by a sword with all her strength, it would be nothing if she wanted to slip away under the hands of Song Pin and others. Simple things. Chao Gun said calmly, there are at least 7 places. Song Gaoyuan rubbed his eyebrows. It seems that the combination of the flying swords of the 3 sword celestial beings is still less than expected. Situjiu's natal flying sword is called a water vessel. When it transforms into a void, it can follow the spiritual energy between the heaven and the earth to flow secretly and silently. The thicker the spiritual energy is, the more condensed the flying sword is. A certain Yupu in the history of Lixiazu at the time of Qi refining and exhaling, he died suddenly for no reason. So far, that sect has not found out who killed his ancestor, so he can only use careless Qi refining, crossing the robbery to solve the corpse, finalized. And one of Song Pin's 2 natal flying swords, the Door God, can be attached to Situjiu's water vein, just like a water traveling around, inspecting the jurisdiction, and at the same time sending various priests to sit in various places. Puha natal one of the flying swords, couple, refining characters is refining swords, also known as Mo Yuanyang. One of the supernatural powers of the natal flying sword is that it can assist the degree of fit of the first 2 flying swords. It's a pity that Pu He only has 2 flying swords, and this flying sword, Mo Yuanyang, is a little tasteless. If he could own 3 flying swords, Pu He felt that he would have been a fairy long ago. When he arrived at the Great Wall of Sword Chi, let alone the upper 5-level mat at the bottom of Mihu, even against the sword fairy Mihu and Yuqing, he has the power to fight. Will he win? Fuck your mother for sure. Situjiu understood instantly, but was choked up for a moment. The 7 Earth Immortal sword cultivators who had never been to the Great Wall of Sword Chi finally came to their senses. It was obvious that one of Chao Gun's real bodies was using some kind of secret technique to investigate this place at this moment. Scrofulariaceae smiled and said, take your time. It may not be impossible to find out, but it may be that the other party is cautious enough and did not make a move at all. Song Pin said, use the most stupid elimination method, don't keep these 6. Her face is extremely glamorous, her makeup is extremely attractive, and she has more hair accessories. She and Xie Songhua, who is used to wearing a plain face, are 2 extremes. A secular woman, let your beauty be all over the country. If you wear gold and silver, cumbersome and cumbersome, it will only be too much, but it is good looking when you are piled up by Song Pin. Pu He laughed and said, okay, this method is good, I will do it. I am well known outside, so I am not short of these few trivial grievances on the mountain. One of the old Jiangxi's personal disciples, the young Yi Du, said from his heart, Old Pu, I heard that the Confucian temple is now under strict control. If you kill here randomly, the genealogy will not be guaranteed. Let's go down the mountain this time, even if we can't go back. Think about where to stay. No, don't worry about your head when you do things. I have an idea. If you don't stay here, you can have your own place. We three, master and apprentice, might as well go to Luapa Mountain and join Mr. Ingguan. The girl Shuizhou nodded in agreement and said, okay, but it's best to be an old man, master. One person does things and one person is in charge. Yedu and I keep the clan genealogy and prepare with both hands, so as not to keep the clan and the Lord Ingguan don't accept it. I really want to beg on the side of the road. Scrofulary had no choice but to explain. Puha, Song Pin said don't keep it, not to send them on the road. Song Gaoyuan said, don't rush to throw them out, let's observe secretly for a few days. Scrofulariaceae nodded, they are already in the star position. The natal flying sword of Scrofulariaceae is called Three Altars. According to the rank division of the Summer Palace, it is a well-deserved Jiazhong. His flying sword not only has both offensive and defensive capabilities, but also has a huge growth potential, which is the key to the dream of sword repairers. According to the Taoist rituals of Zhaijiao, there are 9 ways to form an altar, divided into 3 types, upper, middle, and lower. Before going to the Great Wall of Sword Qi, Scrofulariaceae had already created the 3 lower altars, step by step, from low to high, and the life-continuing altar with a star position of 240. After returning to his hometown and getting the relic of the ancestor, Hiyu a heroic spirit collection, Scrofulariaceae retreats and then exits. The 3 altars in the middle, from high to low, are Huanglu Yanshou altar, Chenqing altar and Xuxia altar. Therefore, in the Summer Palace, Scrofulariaceae won the reputation of many colleagues. A natural formation master, a 2-legged walker, the more natal objects refined, the better. The sword cultivator in the same realm is invincible, and the qualifications for ascension. Even Wang Xinshui said something fair, Scrofulariaceae, now it is the hidden official who is covering you, and when the hidden official goes to your hometown in the future, you are not familiar with the place, so you have to cover the hidden official. The young Yin official immediately nodded his approval, it must be for this reason. Scrofulariaceae is too embarrassing. Pu He, an old sword cultivator who is very wild when he speaks, is tall and thin, with a gloomy face, which always gives people a vicious feeling that is not easy to get along with. There is no need to doubt, this is called Xianjiuxinqing, you read it right. Pu He is famous for his withdrawn temperament and insidious behavior in his hometown, but he is a veritable genealogy master, a senior ancestor of the sect. There is no way. When Pu He was young, he had very good aptitude, and he was also a swordsman. He was accepted as a close disciple by the senior old man in the Fendu sect at that time. The old monk passed away soon. The younger sister Duo took care of Puha. But in his hometown Zongmen, Pu He almost never cared about the business, instead he only caused troubles for the Zongmen, chasing after each other to help clean up the mess. He was squandered, and when the female cultivator in charge passed away, no one could control Puha. Later, the junior who was in charge of the law was used to being bullied by Pu He since he was a child. It is no exaggeration to say that he beat Pu He when he saw Pu He. The trembling kind, in fact, the senior brother of the current suzerain was in a similar situation when he was young. People often framed and blamed this Pu Laojian, who liked to frame others the most. Then Puha almost took over everything and publicly said, yes, I did it. The Patriarch Hall couldn't stop him, so he could only help wipe his again and again, through the Shanshui Mansion newspaper of his own sect, earnestly and swear, and declared to the outside world that, I swear to God that this matter was not done by Puha. AP, half of one continent is bad. Otherwise, when Jiang Shangzhen earned such a great reputation in Beiju Luzhou, why was he called Puha No. 2? Therefore, the salary of the Qi trainee who is in charge of a Shanshui mansion report of the Fendu sect is much higher than that of his peers with the general zone prefix. Back then in the Great Wall of Sword Qi, Xie Zhi, who was born as a casual cultivator in Fuyazu Shanzi, stood with Puha, a genealogical monk in Lixiazu, and their identities had to be swapped. He had a disastrous defeat with Miyu when he tried swords, and he lived in the Sword Fairy's private residence, Tsueyu Pavilion, outside the city, while Xie Zhi's private residence was nearby, named Mei, which was a little bit powdery. Xie Zhi was born as a field cultivator, and his sword practice qualifications were not very good. It is generally believed that he had made it to the upper 5 realms by relying on great perseverance and stumbled. Old Jianqiu has been a bachelor all his life, not to mention that he didn't even confiscate a single disciple in Fuyazu. When Xie Zhi finally changed his mind and wanted to collect 1 or 2 direct descendants from the Great Wall of Sword Qi, it was too late. The old man failed to accept apprentices, nor could he return home. Rushing to the battlefield for the last time, Xie Zhi fought side by side with Lu Su, a swordsman in the nascent Soul realm who is also a foreigner. The last time in this life, he handed over the sword, only to clear the way for the younger generation to escape from difficulties and return home alive. In the Summer Palace, there are also foreign sword cultivators, and they are also young. In fact, Song Gaoyuan and Deng Liang are closer to the native sword cultivators of Shou Miao. That mountain top cannot be said to be out of tune. After all, it is not so harmonious, and that small mountain top, if the mountain owner is a hidden official, then the deputy mountain owner is Guozhuzhou, who was the lowest level back then. Dogleg Escort, Xian Shenchao Gun, Wang Xinshui, Gu Jianlong. However, Song Gaoyuan and others, especially Lin Junbai, all knew that Luo Zhini had something interesting for Mr. Ingguan, but they all chose to see through it instead of revealing it. I remember that on the day when I left the Summer Palace, it was Shou Miao who saw Song Gaoyuan off on behalf of Yinguan who couldn't get away, and gave him a package, saying it was a parting gift from Yinguan. When he got to the ferry, Song Gaoyuan opened it, only to find that it contained the relics of his fellow swordsman, Senior Xie, and a file record about Xie Zhi's situation in his hometown. Before the discussion ended, the 7 Earth Immortal Sword cultivators all received a job to display their supernatural powers, each with their own means. A sword cultivator sacrificed a flying sword like an ancient mirror, stepped into the mirror, and then walked out of the ancient mirror from the back, and there was another strange person who seemed to have changed his soul. Jiangxi's magic robe was rippling again, and he turned into a weak, walking corpse, in an instant, and then turned into a puff of black smoke, which floated away. A sword cultivator took out a Lifeng hairpin, shook it gently, the golden light rippled like water ripples, and disappeared in an instant. A sword cultivator sacrificed his natal object, which is an ancient object, the white jade rope pattern concentric knot, which can borrow Taoism with another monk for a period of time. There is also Jianqiu who shook out the ancient real remains of a woman in a colorful dress from his sleeve, shrunk his figure, as small as a dust, and went to entangle in the cave between her eyebrows. The woman in a colorful dress with heavy makeup stepped out, shrunk to the ground when Shanha reappeared. He was already in a secluded place in a high-rise mansion. A sword cultivator sacrificed his natal flying sword, the bell outside the cloud. There was a crisp sound, and there was an echo in a certain back alley, and the real body appeared there without anyone noticing, and the subtle sound in the lobby was still lingering, and there was a lingering sound that lingered for 3 days. Sign. 2 female sword celestial beings stand leaning on a railing, climbing high and looking into the distance. Compared with the evil spirit that was all over his body when he just left Daoxian Mountain, Song Pin's aura is much gentler now. Even after returning to the teacher's gate, Song Pin still carried a strong murderous look, and she really didn't recover for a long time. Xie Songhua asked with a smile, "Let's see who entered the fairyland earlier." Song Pin smiled and said, "Even if you win by chance, it's still a victory without force. CS Songhua tut tut, women are beautiful, so you can think beautiful. Since you can't be envious, why don't you be envious? It's not without reason that you don't have a Taoist companion. The famous sword, Fuyao, carried by Song Pin hides a considerable part of Fuyao continent swordsmanship. It's a pity that in the early years in Jinjiazu, Song Pin didn't want to take advantage of this huge advantage. She once set a rule for herself that she would never touch the luck of the Fuyao sword. It's just that when he arrived at the Great Wall of Sword Qi, Song Pin only participated in the battle of defending the city once. Song Pin immediately regretted it. At the top of the city, Song Pin only hated that his realm was too low and his sword was too slow. So after returning to his hometown, in the past few years, Song Pin left the two direct disciples in the sect, and asked the suzerain to teach swordsmanship and Taoism on his behalf. She came to Fuyao continent quietly alone, relying on the right time, place and people, trying to refine that majestic and incomparable swordsmanship as soon as possible. Refining luck itself is like asking a sword fairy, it is not easy. Song Pin and CS Songhua and Li Kai, who are also female sword celestial beings, do not talk about the style of the sword, but the rest are indeed different. Back then when he returned to the Jinjiazu Zongmen, Song Pin held an acceptance ceremony that did not invite any outsiders to observe the ceremony. Even within the Zongmen, only a few monks of the same generation from the Patriarch Hall attended the ceremony. He also reserved 2 peaks full of aura for Sun Zhao and Jin Wan, and the peak opening ceremony will be held only after the 2 direct successors become Jin Dan. On the side of the Zongmen Patriarch Hall, there was no demur. But after a great battle, the Zongmen's Patriarch Hall god, together with the hanging statues of the ancestors of the past generations, had to be moved to Lixiazu. When the war ended, the Zongmen's old site had already been reduced to ruins. The carefully selected mountain tops are also not suitable for practice, and Song Pin is very guilty about this. CS Songhua joked, "You are different from me, have you been annoyed by others these years?" Song Pin shook his head and said, "It's okay, anyway, it's pretty clean if I hide from people." After these sword immortals returned to their hometown, they never took the initiative to mention the Great Wall of Sword Qi, but there would always be some friends in their hometown who often asked questions, and they were all questions that they didn't want to answer. For example, the boss sword fairy who has only a few swords from beginning to end, how good is his swordsmanship? Ao Liang, who is the son of Yixing, and when Xing's right and left, if they fight freely, who is more powerful? Among the 3 old sword celestial engravings, Qi Tingji, the only one left in our Howren world, is better or worse than Dong Sangying and Qin Shi in terms of swordsmanship. Why did Xiao Yun, the former hermit official, betray the Great Wall of Sword Qi with 2 sword celestial beings of the same lineage? She has really become a 14th-level sword cultivator who has sought refuge in the wilderness. What kind of person is that young man named Shin Pingon? How did you become the last hermit official in the Summer Palace? And how could he become Ning Yao's Taoist companion? CS Songhua asked with a smile, "Are you really planning to find a Taoist companion?" Song Pin said, "The other party must be a swordsman, and the realm is higher than mine." CS Songhua shook his head, "It's difficult, it's too difficult. When you refine Fuyao Island's sword luck and enter the fairyland, it's better than yours." Hi! Could it be a sword cultivator at the Ascension realm? Now there are only a few in the entire Howren Tianxia, and you can count them on one hand. It's a bad old man who's half buried in the ground, who can you turn to? I found them, a branch of pear blossoms crushed crabapple. Song Pin smiled and said, "Then I won't look for it." CS Songhua laughed and said, "You can wait and see, wait for 100 years or hundreds of years, old cows eat young grass, it's not good." Song Pin raised his eyebrows, "Well, wait and see." CS Songhua lowered his voice and said, "I have an excellent candidate ready-made, do you refer to it? Next, the two female sword immortals spoke from their hearts. Their chatting like this must be more exciting than drinking. Because Yu Yu has been to Luopa Mountain, Chao Deng specially invited Yu Yu to his house for a drink, and the old Jinshu brought along his close disciple Yedu along the way. Before Chao Gun entered the Summer Palace, he was still a sword cultivator at the Longmen realm, and he entered the Golden Core realm after becoming a sword cultivator of the Yingguan lineage. Senior actually only needs one word to make Pu He shut up obediently. Chao Gun joked, "When Yu Yu was in Jindan, I dared to go to the Great Wall of Sword Qi to pass the sword to kill demons." Yu Yu stroked his beard and smiled, shaking his head lightly. I can't say it, it hurts my feelings too much." The reason why the two sides can become close friends with an irreversible relationship is that they are used to quarreling as soon as they meet, and there are always some things that they will never talk about. Chao Gun turned his head to look at Yi Du, and asked, "How's the injury?" Yi Du grinned and said, "It has been completely cured, but a lot of medicinal materials and time were wasted, which made the practice much slower." Pu He nodded and said, "It is really a blessing in misfortune to be able to complete the natal flying sword. Consumption a little fairy money is nothing. As for breaking through the realm one after another, with Yida's qualifications and my knowledge of swordsmanship, there is no need at all." In a hurry. Yi Du said, "I'm anxious because I recognized you, the nascent soul realm, as my master. Look at the other fellow villagers, which master is not in the Jade Royal realm?" Pu He, who poked his heart, stared and said, "It's not that I have never been to the Jade Royal realm as a teacher, and my swordsmanship attainments have never fallen along with the realm, and my vision is right there." Yi Du said, "You can shut up now, Che Jilu will not say a few words." After all, there were outsiders present, and old Pu, who couldn't hold back his face, was impatient. "Why do you brat talk to master?" Yi Du said, "Chao Gun, my master treats you as an outsider." Chao Dagon smiled and nodded slightly. Pu He laughed loudly and said, "Chao Gun, I am a closed disciple, am I very smart? Tell me the truth, can the current Yedu enter the Summer Palace?" Of course, the more brilliant one has to be Shuozhou. In short, the two good apprentices should each get half of the true biography of their own master. Chao Gun smiled and said, "Not for the time being." Yi Du hesitated to speak. Forget it, it's rare that he didn't break a few words. When he left the Great Wall of Sword Qi, the young sword cultivator was in the cave mansion realm, and it was only at the beginning of summer this year that he broke through and entered the sea viewing realm. It's also breaking the first realm, but the senior sister Shuozhou entered the Dragon Gate realm from the sea viewing realm. It can be seen from this that there is a gap in the aptitudes of the two parties. Of course, this is related to Yida's serious injury. The boy died just like that. Pu He felt that this was fate, so he took Yi Du, who didn't even have a surname, as a close disciple. In Jinchi Great Wall, whether he was born in a noble family is very simple, it depends on whether Jinshu had a surname when he was young. As a rule, sword cultivators in the middle five realms, whether they are Yuanying or Dongfu, will leave the city at certain moments and rush to the battlefield outside the city. Being able to return to the city alive is a skill, and being able to save a share of military exploits is even more skillful. If you don't have this skill, where will you die? Anyway, there is no custom of burial in the Great Wall of Sword Qi. The head of the city is the head of the grave. The battlefield outside the city is the cemetery. When Yidu came to the world of Hauran, there seemed to be only three things: eating and practicing swords and scolding his master. On the side of his master Pu He, Yidu has always been one of his fathers, but Pu He still dotes on this close disciple who is the most undisciplined and unruly. Before leaving his hometown, Pu He was in the sect of his family's Fendus sect. Pu He's lineage is not weak, and he sits on the three peaks. Later, when his master is not around to teach swords, he is still promising, and he is not bad. 2 more reincarnated disciples. During the period when Patriarch Pu was on the Great Wall of Sword Chi, glory to the ancestors, and killed the quartet, he held the peak opening ceremony by himself. It's a pity that the 2 reincarnated disciples are not sword cultivators. Occasionally he is in a good mood, so he will call the reincarnated disciples to drink together. The old rule is that if you are not yuaniing, you can stand and drink with vegetables. The family style is strange. This kind of thing is probably only done by Puha, and both parties feel that it is only right and proper. But now there are 2 more direct heirs. Yedu always sits and eats and drinks, but Shuozhou does as the Romans do, eating and toasting standing up with those brothers, sisters and nephews. As long as Puha participates in the wine bureau on the mountain, Jean Dan Dixian is not qualified to sit. Whether he likes to come or not, he likes to drink or not, and he can't hold back Pu's wine. What shady deeds, for example, if you want to avenge yourself but you can't do it, as long as you get to know Puha, you can make the old sword fairy happy again. Puha never speaks big words at the wine table, promises anything to anyone, but after a while, the other party will be happy. No need for revenge. After all these years, Yedu still doesn't like Haoran Tianxia at all. On the side of the brothers and sisters of the same sect, or those sect cultivators who are too old but want to call themselves junior uncles and uncles, or even grand masters and uncles, Yedu never smiled when he met. Too lazy to nod, Yedu only has one mind: I practice my sword, and within 100 years I must make a name for myself in order to go to the colorful world. However, Yedu still admires Chao Gun and the 3 of them. Sword cultivators who have stayed in the summer palace must be respected. The exception is the rice embroidery that eats Yupujing as a meal. Chao Gun asked with a smile, I heard from Shuozhou that she doesn't like master because of her mediocre qualifications. You always want to throw her to others. Yedu rolled his eyes. That girl is a thief. Look, it's all in a tricky state, the master who doesn't suffer at all. He was not angry but happy, laughed and said, don't listen to her nonsense, it's just a matter of chasing after the wind. No, absolutely not. Regarding Zuezha's arrangement, Pu's earliest plan back then was to discuss with this apprentice whether he could persuade Shuozhou to change his family. I believe she will not to achieve will only be higher. For example, Puha would ask Lixiazu, a female patriarch of a sect, whose realm is not high, jade-like state, but she has money and cultivates well. She can be regarded as one of Puhi's confidant. She has known her for many years, and now she is in charge of the money and treasure house of her sect. This female cultivator has a good face and still looks like a girl. Now that she sees Puhi, she is still the delicate and gentle brother Pu. Her bones are so crisp that she can be called, but Puhi doesn't say anything else, only in the matter of men and women up. It's still easy clearly, if you can't take responsibility, don't get out of bed. He also thought about whether to let the suzerain elder brother accept Shuozhou as his heir, but after getting along for a long time, he was reluctant to part with it, and Puha pretended that such a thing had never happened before. In the past 2 years, the suzerain brother has been asking Puhi about this every now and then, and vowed that as long as Shuozhou is willing to change his master, it must be his close disciple, and it is possible to take over the suzerain in the future. How long has it been since there was a sword immortal suzerain in our separatist sect? What kind of disciples do you Puha teach? Son, it's purely because you don't pay attention to teaching. If you really have to pay attention to teaching, they will not become talents. Puha is only a deaf ear. The reason why this suzerain senior brother has such a good eye for Shuozhou, he has to admit that he does have a unique vision. On the one hand, Zuezha's aptitude for practicing swordsmanship is excellent, not to mention that she must reach the 5th realm, and she is sure to enter the nascent soul realm in the future. More importantly, Shuozhou and Yedu have completely different temperaments. She usually doesn't like to talk, and looks weak, yes, but Yen air is bad, Pu he likes it very much. If Yedu is a pure sword cultivator, then Shuezhou is a pure genealogy monk. After all, in Pu's view, a genealogy monk has no way of Yi Xiuye, so he is not a genealogy monk. Now the entire sect, except for Pu He and the sect master, almost thinks that she is a simple-minded little girl who is easy to be deceived, speaks softly, and has no defense against others. But from Pu He's point of view, it was more of a joke to ask Yi Du if he could go to the summer palace just now, but this girl Shuezhou can really go to the summer palace. Back then when Pu He traveled to the Great Wall of Sword Qi, many immortal mansions at the top of Lixiazu breathed a sigh of relief, except that there was no banquet to celebrate. In his hometown, Pu Leo Jiangxian has as many friends as enemies on the mountain, and this is not a joke. It's no wonder that Yedu would ask in Daoxian Mountain back then, "Old Pu, you have so many enemies, would you get yourself hacked to death together?" It's really because the master's reputation in his hometown is too bad. There was a gentle knock on the door in the corridor, and Chao Gun said with a smile, "Come in." Shuezhou pushed the door open and closed it again, with an embarrassing expression on his face. He said guiltily, "Chao Immortal Master, Master is embarrassed to tell you, but now he is tight on money, and he will have to pay back the fairy money that he borrowed from you in Ganoderma Zhai back then." At that time, Chao Gun was sitting with Yi Du on the steps outside the gate of Ganoderma Lucidum Zhai, and Pu He asked Shuezhou to borrow the fairy money twice, and when added together, it was actually only a dozen grain rain money. In the words of Master Pu He, that kid Chao Gun has money, and if we master and apprentice can pay back this kind of small money, we will not pay it back. Chao Gun smiled and said, "It's okay to pay back the money later, anyway, it's calculated as interest." Pu He's expression was stiff, and Yi Du took a deep breath. Sure enough, none of these people who came out of the summer palace were fuel-efficient lamps, and none of them were good birds. Shuezhou was smiling, she spread her hand slightly towards the master, the apprentice had already done his best. Although Pu He is an orthodox genealogical monk, he is proficient in disguise and escapism. In addition to swordsmanship, he knows more about heresy, or crooked ways, than swordsmanship. In Howren's 3 continents in the northwest, there are deeds everywhere that Pu Jiangxian's geese must leave a name. Shan Zaixiu and Jianghu martial arts all respected this wild Pu Lao sword immortal. Otherwise, Jiang Shangzhen, who had a bad reputation in the street, would not be called Puha No. 2 in Beiju Luzhou. The reason why Pu He went to the Great Wall of Sword Qi back then was not only because he wanted to make some great achievements there, but also had something to do with the broken pots of his own sect. Just talking about Zongman's senior brother, he said a cruel word to Pu He face to face. "Junior brother Pu, if you continue to keep your old habits like this, I have only 2 choices, either I will not be the suzerain, you will be the suzerain, and our Fendu faction will be destroyed in your hands like this, it is over. Either you will be expelled from the division by me, and never again he is the genealogy monk of our sect." Pu He was heartbroken by this unconscionable senior brother, fortunately he gave him the suzerain position back then. In a fit of anger, Pu He went to the Great Wall of Sword Qi, which he had wanted to go for a long time. In the end, he was tricked by a certain idiot, called him brother and brother at the wine table, and swore that Miyu was a waste of jade realm that had never been seen in the Great Wall of Sword Qi for thousands of years. "Brother, you are the best show's invincible sword energy. This kind of fame that is given to one for nothing and not picked up when it is thrown on the ground is simply outrageous. If I hadn't been 2 realms higher than Miyu, I would have to challenge him every day, and my victory would have to go up and down." Pu He did feel somewhat guilty towards his own sect, thinking that if he succeeded in asking the sword, he would become the first person in the history of Haren Tianxia to win the sword questioning in the same place as Jinchi Great Wall and Sword Cultivator. After leaving the wine table, he went to ask me you about swords. Everyone was in the Jade Royal realm, and he was in the upper 5 realms of his hometown. It is a handy and lightweight thing. Yu was unwilling to take the sword at first. Did I provoke you? Are you willing to ask me about the sword? Why don't you find another person and go to Sun Juyuan or Gao Kuei? You won me, do you really have a little bit of face? The more he listened, the more confident he became, and the more confident he became, he began to use the aggressive method, which was the trump card that he gave to he that day. In fact, just one sentence. Me who has such a precious brother like you, it is really a blessing in his previous life. Sure enough, Yu, who was still a little foolish at first, immediately agreed to the sword questioning with a dark face. As a result, if Yu hadn't withdrawn his sword at the end and showed mercy, he would have been blocked. Didn't this say that Yu is just an embroidered pillow with no jade in it, and all his energy is spent on women? When he, who had conceded the bet, went to settle accounts with that idiot, he was beaten up and scolded he for losing the face of our Howren sword immortal. He, Liang, did not have such a wimpy brother. Do not violate the river water, pretend not to know each other. Seeing that he was really miserable, Yumo comforted him, but asked about the loss of the sword. What a big deal, it was nothing more than staying in the Jianqi Great Wall for 100 years according to the agreement, so we brothers can be good companions, why not beautiful? Dogs are real dogs. The past is unbearable, and every time I think of it, I have to shed a bitter tear. It's just that the other party said something, saying that he will not regret staying here for 100 years. Of course he didn't believe it at that time. Now that I think about it, that finally said something human. In the second half of the night, Shuozhou took the lead and was responsible for threading the needle. The 8 sword fairy embryos from the Great Wall of Sword Qi reunited in a foreign land. They didn't talk much at the inn last time, and today they finally left their master and gathered here to chat. The age is similar, not much difference, but the atmosphere is not too harmonious, far from the kind of scene that outsiders imagined when fellow villagers see fellow villagers with tears in their eyes. Knowing that Yu Qingzhang and Yu Qingzhang were the Sword Qi Great Wall who left with the young hermit, they also went to Luopa Mountain in Baya Pingzu to practice for a while. Jin Wan and Sun Zhao looked at each other. What were Yu Qingzhang and He Xiangting thinking? The master they're looking for, Yu, seems to be just a Jade realm, right? It's not that they look down on Mr. Yu, but no matter how you look at it, it's not a good choice to leave after going to Luopa Mountain, right? Yedu spoke the most impolitely, with a thorn in his mouth. Is there something wrong with your brains? If you don't wait for Luoyuashan, you will have the opportunity to be the direct disciple of Lord Yingguan, but you want to follow an old sword cultivator in Yupu realm to go around. Hang out. Let alone leaving Luopa Mountain voluntarily, even if Lord Yingguan drives me away, does this kind of behavior count? Senior Sister Shuozhou, you like reading, tell me about it. Shuozhou tilted his head and said with a smile, revenge for kindness. This statement is a bit heavy. It may be more accurate to replace it with ungrateful. Zhu Xing was equally disapproving of these two choices, but the young man seemed to be naturally not talkative, and with the help of Yi Du to speak, he was even less bothered to talk. He Xiangting's face was livid, and he clenched his hands into fists, obviously very angry. Yu Qingzhang said calmly, we can find whoever we want to be a master, it's none of your business. In another 10 years, I guess you are still a suitor, and then we will see if you have the confidence to talk to us like this. Yi Du sneered, wait. It turned out that Xie Song took the lead and suggested that they and their disciples, every 60 years, have a sword quiz with each other, to compare and rank. Therefore, the sword cultivator in their minds, the real opponent, or the one who needs to surpass the most, all think that there is only Qinli, who is nicknamed Little Hermit Officer. Of course, there are also sword cultivators like Sun Zhao who feel that even if they are at the bottom, it doesn't matter. Anyway, in a comparison with Jiazi, if you lose this time, there will be a next time. Shuizhou asked with a smile, I heard that you have met Pei Qian. He just nodded his head. Zhao Mui started pouring beans out of bamboo tubes, talking about that elder sister Pei's invincible boxing skills. She was able to fight with Lu Suiyu, who was one level above her, in the Leigong Temple of Ai Island, and fought back and forth. Juxing and Chaomu were only 7 or 8 years old when they left their hometown. Compared with Chaomu, who has a lively personality, his demeanor is obviously younger and mature, and his usual words, deeds, and mood are as stable as an old man. Kayama's house in his hometown is on the same street as Guozhujiu, and Sister Guo likes to call herself my master's temporary close disciple. A few years ago, Mr. Yingguan's great disciple who founded the mountain, Sister Pei Qian, gave them 2 special bookmarks made of luopashan as a meeting gift, made of verdant bamboo leaves, with a message written on them. That was the first time Chao Mu saw Zhu Xing receiving gifts after he followed Master to Hao Ren Tianxia. Before that, when traveling across the 3 continents covered in golden armor and flowing clouds, many elder immortal masters wanted to give gifts, but they all held their faces with stern faces, their hands wrapped around their sleeves, and they deliberately looked at them. Never say a word. Even if Xiao Mu only asked a question afterwards, she was scolded until she cried, and threatened her not to talk to him in the future, or she would be beaten. Letting Xia Songhua, a big girl with yellow flowers, be the teacher of the 2 children is really tiring. Besides, the 2 apprentices are really difficult to take care of. In a short while, another fellow of the same age from the same country can cry so hard that Xia Songhua, who is used to asking swords, can comfort others, which really exhausts her physically and mentally. That's why she told Pei Qian back then that your master is better at raising children than being a hidden official. Jin Luan praised and said, as expected of Her Majesty Yingguan's founding disciple. In Jinjiazu, you can hear about her legendary deeds wherever you go. The immortal mansion on Jinjiazu Mountain and the kingdoms below the mountain respected the female martial arts master Jing Qian extremely highly. In fact, it is not common for sword repairers to talk about martial arts. He Xiangding and Yu Qingzhang met Pei Qian for the first time in Huanggeji, the blessed land of cloud caves in Tonggishao. In my impression, it was a young woman with hair tied into a bun, clean and neat, with distinct eyebrows and eyes. Even when she was by Lord Yingguan's side, she still didn't seem to talk much. If it hadn't been for the tense confrontation between Pei Qian and Pu Shanyi Yunyun, which was deeply memorable, I would have felt that she is a gentlewoman who knows how to read and respect, and treats people kindly. So when they arrived at Lord Yingguan's hometown and went to Mount Luoba, the 9 children couldn't overlap the 2 images of Jing Qian and Pei Qian. Most of them are still extremely jealous and afraid of the little brother and big white goose boy in white. The atmosphere is not good. Shuizhou was the first to break the silence, and said with a smile, "It's the noise, it's not from the same village." He raised his head and nodded and said, "In the future, if there is something to do, remember to say hello to each other. Let's not always trouble the elders, let alone trouble the Lord Yingguan." Yu Qingzhang said, "We are also very grateful to Master Chao." Jin Luan asked suspiciously, "Master Chao?" He Xiangting explained, "Master Yingguan has an alias named Chao Mo, let us call him Master Chao." Yedu sat on the railing, folded his arms around his chest, and said, "What kind of place is Luopa Mountain? Tell me about it." Not far away, Song Pin and Xie Songhua smiled at each other and breathed a sigh of relief. "I'm really afraid that they will fight, and the flying swords will fly around, making a mess." Afterwards, Lu Ji secretly visited Chuanjiao Mountain, took a look at the ore vein, and roughly confirmed that there was no formation inside. She didn't stay for long before returning to the Dragon Elephant Sword sect in South Pazuo continent. After that came Luzhou Malumahi Lushur of Beiju and Yuanyingjing Jinshu Liuxiu. At the Great Wall of Sword Qi back then, he and Situ Jiu were drinking buddies who often met, but they hardly spoke. In fact, a girl with rosy cheeks and a sable hat came here during the period. She found a busy market, opened the package, squatted on the ground, set up a stall for a long time, bargained with people, and was very energetic. She earned a few snowflakes. She also wandered around secretly, and she found a sneaky ascension monk, the freshly baked one, who had just broken through from the fairyland for a few days, and found that the other party was just going to come here to do business seriously. Although I was a little bit big-hearted, I wanted to pull the Jinpu dynasty to swallow that mind vein together in private, and then I had a private interview with the emperor. The two sides chatted very well, probably after drinking some wine. The conversation was intense, and said what about the Great Wall of Sword Qi and what about the Summer Palace? So, Chen Qing is not so. The young hermit's words are not so. She didn't make it difficult for the other party. She patiently waited for them to finish talking, and then began to count in her heart. Up. Once Xiago left, it was tantamount to doing a job of controlling the killing and not burying it, leaving a mess. The ascendant cultivator, who was at the pinnacle of his cultivation in this life, naturally mistook it for being struck by someone from the group of sword celestial beings. Can't help it, Bright Jingda showed up, showed his identity, went to the lobby of the mansion, and had to ask for an explanation. He was certain that certain words would never be eavesdropped by others. Taking a 10,000 step back, even if they are heard, what can they do? After all, the Sword Qi Great Wall is already a dilapidated ruin. Feishing City is far away in the colorful world. Next time you open the door and close it again, don't block anyone's eyes. Since Xie Songhua and Song Pin have not yet entered the fairyland among this group of sword cultivators, he feels that he has the right anyway, so he has to fight with them. Relying on going once I went to the Great Wall of Sword Qi, I really thought that I could do whatever I wanted here. Chao Gun and the others really felt baffled, but they also explained to the big monk of Fuyazhou who had disappeared in the Yupu realm for decades and ascended to the Ascension realm as soon as he left the customs. The previous sword had nothing to do with them. Senior, you found the wrong one people. Xie Songhua, who was carrying a bamboo sword case, sat on a chair and closed her eyes to meditate. Song Pin, who was carrying a Fuyao sword, frowned slightly. He clicked his tongue in amazement, thinking that Fuyao Island had been destroyed before, and he had never seen you show up on any battlefield to shake your prestige. Song Gaoyuan said, Senior has peeped at this place at least twice, we just don't care about it. Besides, I believe that Senior knows well, if it is really our sword, there is no reason to deny it. Situ Jiu spoke from his heart, Xie Songhua, Puha, and I will help you buy time. Don't pass your sword lightly. Xie Songhua yawned, what nonsense. Song Pin reminded with his heart, don't rush to do it, I heard Chao Gun and the others discussed it. The cultivator of the Ascension realm who had been exposed looked slightly stagnant, and said with a smile, the room is full of sword cultivators, dare to do it or not. Song Gaoyuan and Scrofulariaceae looked at each other and smiled. They have already let those young sword cultivators withdraw from this place. Chao Gun still had a soft and melodious voice, and waved his hand. Senior was hit by a sword for no reason, and it's normal to get angry because of it. No one can find the slightest fault, and we understand the same. Just to declare again, there is no need to deliberately deny anything. At the same time, since the senior came here to seek money, he should do business with the Jinpu dynasty. It is also unnecessary to stabilize the leadership position of the first person on Fuyazhou Mountain. The machine takes us to stand up. The monk of the Ascension realm stroked his palm lightly, and pretended to appreciate your generation, as expected of someone who has experienced in a certain place. Each one is calmer than the other, and he is not guilty of being a thief. Do you really have nothing to fear? The Golden Core Realm female swordsman also had a violent temper. She said in a deep voice, "Senior Su Jun, must you be so aggressive? This human name is Su Jun, and his real name is Wang Jia. In this Fuyao Island, it used to be a notorious Jade Royal realm. Somehow, it has changed suddenly, and it is the Ascension realm." If she remembers correctly, this person was the Daoist protector, national teacher, and chief priest of several countries before the Great War. Was it a long time ago that there would be a sword robbery, and they avoided it early? Wang Jia said indifferently, "Here, Jean Dan has no place to speak." Just as she was about to get up, she was pressed on the seat by a majestic Daoist force as if she was drowning, unable to move. Xie Songhua raised his eyebrows. Song Pin suddenly said in his heart, "Chop him to death." Yu waited for this sentence. As a result, at this moment, there was an extra woman at the door. "Ning Yao is here." The ascendant cultivator turned his head away. After recognizing the other party's identity, his expression changed drastically and his thoughts changed sharply. He wanted to say a few polite words before heading back home. Standing outside the threshold, she asked, "Where is such a place? Tell me about it." Wang Jiao's face was full of resentment. In fact, he had no intention of speaking, and in an instant, this Ascension realm used several housekeeping skills, evasion methods and blindfold methods at the same time. Still, he was pierced through his back vest by a sharp sword energy on the spot, and was dragged towards the wall by the huge inertia, and his whole body was firmly nailed to the wall. The Yin god wanted to travel far away, but was cut to pieces by the sword energy, and was forced to retreat to his real body. Just as a misty Dharma figure appeared, he was smashed to pieces by the sword energy. Some of the more concealed and mysterious magical powers of this Ascension realm, just because the long river of time in the house seems to be blocked by sword energy, flowing backwards, like water pouring backwards, become false and doomed to be useless. Ning Yao didn't even look at the nonsensical Ascension realm. She stepped over the threshold, and smiled with the Jean Dan female cultivator who was not high in realm and courageous. Chao Gun, Song Pin and the others stood up, but there was a tacit understanding. No one called Ning Yao a hidden official. Ning Yao naturally didn't care about this. After thinking about it, she still felt that someone was better at dealing with this kind of thing. Then a certain person in a green shirt and long gown immediately came to him with a talisman, appeared at the door in an instant, stepped over the threshold, shook his fists a few times, and said with a smile, "What's going on?" Sword of Coming Chapter 11:11. Entering the lobby, Chen Pingan, who was temporarily recruited by Ning Yao, approached a chair, did not sit down, and stretched out his hand to gently press the chair ring. Just as Chao Gun wanted to speak, he was preempted by Scrofulary, and roughly explained the reason with Lord Ingguan. Song Gaoyuan couldn't help laughing, and suddenly felt that he had returned to the summer palace. But one thing must be admitted, once the young hermit came, they were relieved. Chen Pingan heard Dalyu, and suddenly smiled and said, "This matter, when compared, is a messy account. It can be said that you have been wronged, or you have not been wronged. Because the one who cut Wang Jia with the sword earlier was my down and out." She heard that Wang Jia and His Majesty the Emperor of the Jinpu dynasty drank some wine and chatted a few words that were not very pleasant. She is not very good-tempered. The status of worship is the most precious, so one didn't hold back, and sneaked a sword, which led to today's misunderstanding. Chao Dun finally found a chance, and said with a smile, "Look at this incident, we are causing trouble to Mr. Ingguan. No matter how stupid Scrofulariaceae is, it can't say this kind of indiscriminate flattery, so it has to change the way of speaking, I have to thank Senior Su Jun so that we can meet with Lord Ingguan. Song Gaoyuan looked around, and revisited as usual in a trance. Familiar faces came to mind. The ascendant cultivator was still nailed to the wall with his back to the crowd, unable to see his face and expression clearly. Ning Yao knew Chen Pingon very well. Since he has said so much, it means that it is far from the point of burying his suspicions, otherwise he would have let himself withdraw the 12-sword qi that pierced through Wang Jia's natal qi palace. Xie Songhua was very puzzled, and asked in his heart, Ning Yao has become so good at fighting. Because he is the number one person in the world, so he is extra strong. I remember the last time we said goodbye, Ning Yao was still the sword of the nascent Soul Xiao. Although the news about Feishing City and Wucai Tianxia is known to the top of the mountain, Ning Yao broke the mirror all the way, and finally became the legitimate No People. Song Pin put his fingers together, crossed his shoulders, and lightly pressed the scabbard of the long sword, Fuyao, behind his back, and replied, "It's hard to say." She is actually the first sword cultivator who sensed the existence of Ning Yao, thanks to her sword which is connected with Fuyao Continent's luck. Only monks in the Ascension realm can say that they are strong or weak. The so-called weak Ascension, Nan Guangguang, who was first suppressed and beaten by Nin Taoist priests in Yuan Yangzhou of the Confucian Temple, and then had his head chopped off by the criminal officer Haosu at the door of his house, was best example. And strong Ascension, in fact, can be subdivided into two types. As long as a sword cultivator enters the Ascension state, he must be a strong Ascension. For thousands of years, there has been no exception. The second type, such as Wei Shi of Ai Aizhou, who rode a great ride on the road of cultivation in the early years and threw away many Qi practitioners of the same generation, and Zhao of the Tianchi mansion of Longhu Mountain, and the real Huolong of Baodafeng. And this kind of Ascension realm has another meaning with a great reputation. They are called candidates for the 14th realm. Chen Chunan, the mellow Confucian who carries the sun and the moon on his shoulders in South Pazuozu, is of course also included in this list. Above Nanguang, under Long Hushan Celestial Master and others, those in the middle, such as Du Mao and Sun Yuan in Tonggishao, Wanyan Laojing in Jinjiazu, etc., belong to the more average Ascension state Qi practitioners, not weak, but strong enough number. There is still a clear distance between them and Huolong Daoist. And this Viazu Xin fishing with the Dao name Su Jun is of course the same seniority as Nan Guangguang. Chen Pingon knows more inside stories than Xie Songhua and the others. Nan Guangha's Ascension realm is actually not as weak as you imagined. He will definitely lose when he fights with Taoist Nin, but if he really wants to work hard, Nan Guangguang will not lose so badly. In addition, Hao Su specially prepared a series of killers for Nan Guangguang. It is really unbelievable that a veteran Ascension realm, sitting in his own dojo, was beheaded. It's just that the dead can't open their mouths to justify anything. The killing power is as high as that of an Ascension-level swordsman. It is not difficult to beat an Ascension-level Qi trainer, but it is actually very difficult to kill a certain Ascension-level practitioner. Chen Ping put his hands into his sleeves, leaned on the chair ring, and said with a smile, "Friend Shujuan, don't hide your clumsiness. You pretended to be very hard, and we pretended not to know, and it was also very hard. Since we are all smart people, don't bother, treat each other as a fool well." Hearing the words, Wang Jia seemed to weigh the pros and cons for a moment, and came up with an idea. He didn't know what magical power he used to turn his body into a void. He still has an extra with a secondary physique. He was able to turn around and face more than 10 sword cultivators. This person has the appearance of a middle-aged man, wearing a golden crown with more than 2,000 orbs on his head. There are more than a dozen jade trees standing tall, and a pocket golden croak sits on the top of each tree. Wang Jia said calmly, "Since the misunderstanding has been explained clearly, why don't we stop here?" He was born in the lower class of the market, not engaged in production, and called friends and friends. He was heroic and ambitious when he was young. It is said that when Wang Jia was born, a passing warlock saw that his thatched hut was full of royal aura, and told his parents that this son must be a nobleman in the future. Has the appearance of a half-dynasty emperor. Chen Pingan asked with a smile, "If I don't stop, what can you do?" Wang Jia laughed and said, "I dare not to kill, so what's the point of detaining me like this?" Chen Pingan answered irrelevantly, and said slowly, "I heard from my priest earlier that Taoist Shujuan decided that I would become a big brother." Li Guisher, even more swearingly, said that the day I succeeded as the national teacher was the beginning of the decline of the Dali dynasty, just because I have a soft heart that is fierce and soft, and of course I can handle the Qi practitioners on the mountain with ease, but I dare not fight with Dadu at all. Any country in South Africa will go to war and provoke the border at will, because I can't see the death of people down the mountain. From the moment the Sword Qi Great Wall was formed, the greatly iron cavalry would be implicated and reduced to waste. It did. Wang Jia graciously admitted the matter, nodded and said, "Since Lord Yin dared to admit that his family enshrined a sword to injure people, I just watched from the sidelines across the continent and said a few words. There is nothing I dare not admit." Song Pin frowned. "Pu," he asked in his heart, "is it really like this?" These foreign sword cultivators who came out of the dead people have long been accustomed to the deployment of troops and generals in the summer palace, and the arrangement of the battlefield, and they have never thought about this kind of thing. Siti Jiyu said with a gloomy face, "Damn it, if we continue talking like this, it seems that there is really no chance of hacking him to death." Chen Ping suddenly stood up straight, stroked his palms and smiled, "Fellow Su Jun, then you are my confidant. This matter has really troubled my Dao heart for a long time." Wang Jia was slightly taken aback. Apparently he did not expect him to come so as soon as he came out. He just came back to his senses very quickly. Wang Jia looked out of the hall, and said to himself, "My Fuyao Island, the great rivers and mountains, the place of Victoria's shape, the land of gold powder, have all been reduced to ashes. At that time, I was a Qi practitioner in the fairyland, and I had to avoid a doomed war in order to have the hope of proving the Tao and ascending. Naturally, I couldn't do the most proud feat in the world, and of course I couldn't learn from the old man's cross-continental rescue reason. When, however, I don't want to die, and earn a false name that no one will remember after 100 years. Afraid of death and avoiding battles, so what? What can you do to me?" To put it bluntly, Liuxia Continent Ascension Realm Jinghao, Immortal Tsong Qian, which one is not the Fuyao Continent King Jia? Now I take off after robbing and leaving the customs, it is already ascending. Kill me. You hidden official Chen Pingan, you really think that you are a lonely criminal officer Hao Su, you can just leave. Are you willing to leave that lost mountain, willing to give up that Qingping sword sect? Would you rather not continue the culture and morality that the incense burns withered? If you dare not kill me, Ning Yao will do it. Ha, the number one person in the colorful world, a terrifying title, and an enviable realm. If I guess correctly, Ning Yao is it already the 14th realm? The result? If you come to Fuyazu, you want to fight Song Pin's sword Fuyazu. Ning Yao, just wait and see how many times you can go to Howren World with the sword in the future, and you can hang around for a few days in the future. Pooh, he snorted, this guy is so shameless, no wonder he can enter the Ascension realm, but he is short of Daoxing, that's why he didn't ascend but fell, and fell to nascent soul. Song Pin suddenly said, the account of killing Wang Jia is on my head. I can take responsibility for the Confucian Temple's investigation afterwards. The reason is simple. He is in the Ascension realm and wants to become the leader of the immortal master of Izhou, and I need relying on the sword to soar to absorb, and refining the luck of a continent is a life and death battle for the avenue. As for this secret fortune-telling and the like, I don't care about it, anyway. I can't control it anyway. Mr. Ingguan and Ning Yao, you should bear it yourself. CS Songhua said, count me in and help Song Pin share the share, but I don't go to Gongdaland to drink tea, so Ning Yao must agree to send me to the colorful world to hide. Wang Jia shook his head and said with an angry smile, the two girls are out of their minds. They are determined to kill me. What are they planning? Yu said indifferently, my generation of swordsmen don't engage in emotional battles, why bother to cross the inverted mountain? Pooh, he gave a thumbs up, you old boy, you have never done anything serious in your life, only this sentence is so clear, I am convinced. I can't help scolding you in the future, you can talk back. Wang Jia, I took out a white jade scroll from my sleeve, hung it in the air in front of me, and unrolled it slowly. It was a picture of a fairy mountain with a green landscape. The mountain road in the scroll was winding, and visitors the size of mustard seeds came in an endless stream. Incessantly, Wang Jia put his fingers together, and twisted the picture scroll characters one by one, like twisting peanuts, put them in his mouth and chewed slowly, greatly nourishing the way, and the whole body injured by Ning Yao's sword energy continuously Dao Qi is gradually becoming more complete. Wang Jia, who had regained his radiance, smiled and said, I know you are not trying to scare people, and you can really do it, but it is a pity that you made a mistake. Do you think this young hermit will allow you to pay such a high price? Then he will not chin pin gone up. Song Pin was too lazy to talk nonsense with him, and the Fuyao sword was about to be unsheathed behind his back, but Chin Ping pulled out his sleeve, pressed twice, and instantly pressed the long sword back into the scabbard. Wang Jia hiccuped, and put away the picture of the fairy mountain with a lot of history. Today's misunderstanding, everyone may wish to recall carefully, what did I do when I came out of the mansion and came to this lobby? Heard it with a few harsh words, at most coupled with a dirty mind that was seen through by Chao Gun, Chen Pingon dared to kill a local ascension realm of Haran Tianxia without authorization. Then he is not a close disciple of Wen Xing's lineage. How can I speak so bluntly that you can understand the truth? Fuyao Continent's ascension realm Wang Jia, although he has no merit or benefit to Fuyao Continent, he is not wrong or too noble. To tell the truth, I admire you sword repairmen, but I don't think you have any advantages other than high killing power. Open the skylight and tell the truth, it's all for this sake. Then I will be honest with you one more thing. Actually, I am also a sword cultivator. I will not go to the Great Wall of Sword Qi. Ning Yao turned to look at Chen Pingon. Chen Pingon seemed to be lost in thought for some reason. So she didn't draw the sword. Even if Wang Jia exposes himself and admits that he is a sword cultivator. But now Ning Yao can even kill the candidate ghost of the 14th realm. It is easier to kill a sword cultivator who has just entered the Ascension realm. No matter what, you are a candidate for the 14th realm, even if there is only a step and a half between you and the real 14th realm, it is still a natural barrier. If you have never been in this place yourself, you will not know the mystery and magic of this place. Just talk about vision, for example, an ordinary master in the world looks up at the moon, it is hazy, and when he becomes a Qi practitioner, he can vaguely see the veins of mountains in the middle of the moon. After entering the upper 5 realms, hold your breath for a while, and look intently. There will be no change in the phase of the moon, and there will be no difference between the moon and the moon. The ruler is within reach, and the old palaces and mountains undulate in the middle of the moon, showing every detail. But once you join the Tao and become a monk in the 14th realm, there will be an extra path in the world that is exclusive to you. Dream interpreters can see billions of dreams in the world. The avenue involves those who are married, and you can see countless red lines hanging in the air. Chen Pingan's eyes were shining brightly, and he suddenly asked in his heart, Friend Su Jun, you and Tian one of Aquarius Continent, Lu Miao of Luzhou of Beiju, Han Yushu of Tongya Continent, are you familiar with each other? Have you ever done business together? Wang Jia didn't even bother to start a conversation, it was all about nothing. Chen Ping asked with a smile, Friend Su Jun, if you say you are a sword cultivator, you are a sword cultivator. Is there such a good thing in the world? Then if I had met you earlier, why did I have to suffer so much in the prison of the Great Wall of Sword Qi to become a sword cultivator? Wang Jia just wanted to speak. Chen Ping waved his hand. I want to ask for something. Cheating and abducting, and bluffing, no one can do it. Brother bosom friend, I am an old Jianghu. In terms of the richness of Jianghu experience, Song Gaoyuan and several young people combined are not as good as me. Ning Yao, who seemed to be keeping his eyes closed all the time, looked down and quickly rolled his eyes. Chao Gun and Scrofulariaceae looked at each other. Song Gaoyuan, how can his name appear before several? But, brother confidant, this newly baked nickname is really nice. If Wang Xinxue is here, he must be fair. As soon as the hidden official makes a move, he will know if there is one. It is reasonable to say that if the debates on the mountain and the deeds involve right and wrong, it seems that it has not been really cleared up since ancient times. It's just that when I was walking alone in the rivers and lakes, I once heard people talk about a relatively reluctant person. Strong principles, don't ask whether the past was merit or sin, but look at the present as right and wrong. After a moment of silence, Chen Ping subconsciously stretched out his hand and patted the chair's circle, thought about it, shifted his gaze a little, looked at Situ Jiu and Pu He, and asked with a smile, after listening to these sincere words of Taoist Su Jun, is it true? Not hard. It seems reasonable to put yourself in another place. At most, he is just a real villain, not some vicious person. Situ Jiu nodded. The truth is this, but even if Wang Jia is not killed today, the apprentice and grandson of this fellow Taoist Su Jun will travel down the mountain in the future, so take it easy. Putting his palms together, Pu He kept rubbing his hands together, and said, understanding is understanding, itching is even more itchy. Chen Pingan looked at Chao Gun and the three of them again. So this game is very careful and the fire is very good, because it is specially aimed at smart people. The effect Wang Jia wants is an unreasonable but reasonable one. Without the presence of the two-sword celestial beings Xie Songhua and Song Pin, Wang Jia really might not have made it through this, because you are smart enough to be smart. After all, the Jindan realm is there, and the sword skills are still not high enough. Hearing this, Chao Dun asked, is this Wang Jia seeking death on purpose? Scrofulariaceae said doubtfully, even if we fell into his trap, and in a fit of anger, we join forces to kill an immortal with our swords. Of course it's not difficult at all, but it seems to be very difficult to kill an ascendant. Song Gaoyuan said, of course it's difficult, but it's not like there's no chance. Xie Songhua handed out the first sword, Song Pin's Fuyao followed, and Puha and the others, at least one, at least have a chance. Chen Pingan nodded said, that's right, what Wang Jia wants is this little bit of possibility, so that he can continue to accumulate a result that makes you willing to give your sword with all your strength. If Ning Yao didn't show up, he still has more. The aggressive method is interlocking. On the surface, it seems to give in, but in fact it leads you by the nose. If you accidentally injure one or two Jindan sword cultivators in the house, especially when the fighting method here affects those children elsewhere, the two sides will die endlessly. The purpose of Wang Jia's trip, to this moment, finally achieved. He is not a sword cultivator. The reason why he said this is probably because he saw that the situation was wrong, and felt that the hidden official in the summer palace who was lucky enough to establish an incomparable merit was really worthy of his reputation. It's an ancient style, compared to some young people who have no hair on their mouths and can't do things well. Ning Yao coughed when he heard this. Remind someone of your rare reunion after a long absence. Chen Pingan had no choice but to put away a certain natal supernatural power that he didn't use easily. After seeing Chao Gun, he always felt like he was in a summer palace. He couldn't help it, and got used to it. In short, Wang Jia is deliberately annoying me, Ning Yao, and you, he may, I just mean possible, he is not an ascension realm, but a fake realm that can be faked. Right, brother confidant? Wang Jia shook his head when he heard the words, and said with a sneer, "It's nonsense, nonsense. The surname is Qin, do you want me to sacrifice my natal flying sword?" Chao Gun laughed and said, "Brother confidant, why are you so impatient? If it's a sword cultivator, it's a sword cultivator. There's a room full of people who is not a sword cultivator." Scrofulariaceae dismantled the stage and said, "Chao Gun, you are troubled by this local accent, and you are not harsh at all when you swear." Song Gaoyuan laughed and said, "It's not a curse, it's just a copy from Lord Ingguan. It's a pity that the talent and skill are not enough, and I haven't learned the marrow. I'm a few meters away from the door god." Ning Yao rubbed the center of his brows. He would not have stopped Chen Pingan if he had known earlier. Although she was still a hidden official in Feishing City, since she had never been to the summer palace where Chen Pingan was in charge, even if she had heard about the atmosphere there in the early years, it would be better to see it with her own eyes and hear it today. Chen Ping walked around the chair, covered his sleeves with both hands, started to pace, and said to himself, "I once went to the Lu family of the Yin and Yang family in the Shenzhou of the Middle Earth, and we hit it off right away, and we talked very happily, as if we were passing by. Not to miss it, I asked God Lu a more critical question, that is, the patriarch of the Lu family with the Dao named Tianbian, asked him if the mine vein in Fuyazhou was born in the sky, is it because the wild Wenhai left behind? The second hand in the world, Lu Daoyu is much more kind than his confidant brother, he knows everything without saying a word, he didn't hesitate to spend a lot of time and energy, and made a calculation for this purpose. Of course, it may also be because I was with me at that time. Because of Jing Jiangxi's enshrinement, he was in a hurry. Anyway, when fellow Daoist Lu left the customs, his mind was depressed. He said that in Fuyazhou, because of the relationship between Bai Yi and the Eight Kings, the sky was extremely chaotic. There are a lot of variables, and accidents everywhere, which caused him to lose 100 years of morality, and he only calculated a very vague fact. Even if it is really Wild Wenhai who planted the foreshadowing of Quanjiaoshan back then, it is harmless. As for lucky is bad, he has no conclusion. What I said was too general, so I didn't say anything. A partial fact is not qualified to talk about the truth. Thanks to the dual identities of a hermit official and a close disciple of the Wenqing lineage, I can freely browse through the archives of the Summer Palace and the Confucian Temple's Gongda Forest, and then attribute it to another fellow Daoist Lu. I dare say that my understanding of the Ascension realm, to fly Ascension, should be thorough and comprehensive. Chen Ping paused for a moment, then turned his head to look at the fake sword repairman and the fake Ascension realm who were sticking to the wall. Wang Jia, you are going to rely on the sword immortal to pass the sword to help your soldiers escape from calamity and truly ascend to ascension. Wang Jia was silent. Words are useless after all. In front of him, the green-shirted man who came from afar, regardless of his realm and vision, or the scheming of the city government, is a lot better than Chao Gun. For that far-sighted man Wenhai, the mineral lode of Fuyao continent has no more than two functions. One is to get to the north of Dadu in Aquarius continent, so that the wild monsters can attack at both ends. Beiju Luzhou and Lixiazu slowly gnawed down the hard bones of the former, while the latter Lixiazu is a paper, the difficulty is far lower than that of Fuyazhou and Jinjiazu. This jade vein with astonishing reserves can make Zhu Yan beasts like that, move them to Jin. Whether Jiazhou is rewarded according to merit, divided among the barbarian military tents that control the Western Front, or used as a bridge across the sea, it is meaningful. The second way is to plot against my gentleman who is in harmony with the three continents. Of course, what he really wants to plot the most is me, Qin Pingan, and Ning Yao from the colorful world. Since he wants to cheat, he needs to borrow a knife to kill someone. I need a good knife again. In Fuyao Island, hiding a big monster in the Ascension realm who has to enter the game in person and come to the palm of Chuanzhou Mountain is too eye-catching. He must escape the investigation of the Confucian Temple, and the eyes and deduction of the Onmyoji school. A local fairyland that is afraid of fighting and fearing death is just right. Before I met you, I did have more than a dozen ideas, but how to deduce and calculate on the chessboard, even if you add Lu Ji, Xia Go, and Lu Su, each of them secretly passed back to Luopa Mountain. Information, I don't think you can enough. But when I saw you, I immediately understood. Because you want to use soldiers to break through the tribulation of soldiers, and when you are able to get out of the calamity and enter the Ascension realm, that is, when you pull the ore veins to start the formation, an Ascension realm chi practitioner will not hesitate to destroy himself like a madman. As a result, half of the mountains and rivers of a continent were destroyed. Broken land sinks. Chao Gun and the others are okay, they have seen the world in the Summer Palace. Several Earth Immortal sword cultivators in the house who had never been to the Great Wall of Sword Chi felt chills running down their spines when they heard the young hermit's casual narration. Wang Jia smiled wryly and said, "If you want to commit a crime, why is there nothing to worry about?" Chen Ping sneered and said, "You know that smart people, whether they are ordinary smart and can fool fools, or pedantic heaven and man, are extremely smart and can fool all smart people. Where is the biggest problem for people? It is that every time we do everything you want, you don't want to fail." Wang Jia sighed. "Chen Ping gone, what you said makes sense, forget it, I'm afraid of you. Believe it or not, I want to clarify something with you. There are no such messy calculations. I admit that I am really not a swordsman, and it is indeed as you expected. I need to use external force to force my soldiers to survive the last of the three calamities in my own fortune-telling, the ash of a continent, the destruction of the mountain gate, and my own soldiers." Jia, the arrival of Xie Songhua and Song Pin, the eye was really overjoyed. I even deliberately called His Majesty the Emperor of the Jinpu dynasty. It was done on purpose. Even if I didn't get cut by the priest of Luopa Mountain, would have my own means to conflict with Chao Gun and the others. Damn, just relying on Chen Pingan's eloquent rhetoric, even if I didn't get hacked to death by Ning Yao's sword, or by Xie Songhua's random swords, I would definitely have to go to Gondlan to eat prison food tomorrow. I have to admit that if I wasn't myself, I would have to believe a little if I was just an observer. This guy Chen Pingan has a really dirty heart. No wonder being able to be the last hidden official of the Great Wall of Sword Chi was because I underestimated him too much. Wang Jia was really scared. If he wasn't a little bit more honest, there was a high probability that he would not be able to cross the catastrophe today, so he would die. He found Chen Pingan looking at him with pitiful eyes. Then Chen Pingan asked a weird question, "Wang Jia of Yupu, maybe he knows that he is himself, the fairy Yupu. Is it true?" Wang Jia was terrified in his heart, as if belatedly aware of the most terrifying situation. His eyes were full of pleading, as if he was saying, "Hidden officer, save me." In fact, Chen Pingan has already sacrificed a natal flying sword to cage the bird. Every step from the entrance of the lobby to crossing the threshold, even reaching out to touch the chair ring, and every light pat, is revolving the 5 elements of natal objects. In Chuanzhou Mountain, the genealogical monks in Shanzhua Yeshio, who came here to try their luck and do a small business, were all thrown out of the mountain, and the latter were all moved away from the mountain. Far away a boundary, like a dumpling, fell to the ground, or changed its standing position out of thin air. During the period, there were also some Earth Immortals who used their means and refused to move their nests. When a flying sword touched their eyebrows, they would be counted. They didn't dare to bother the sword fairy to send them out of the country, and they ran away in a hurry. After all, in the hearts of everyone, the sword fairy's harsh words and a few reminders sounded, "Dare to grab money and land with me, one by one is tired and crooked." The fight between Ascension Realm is also something you can fish in troubled waters. You meet at the top of the mountain. Don't forget to take the ordinary masters with you to ride the wind and hang in the air. If you have a talisman boat, use the talisman boat. Remember not to touch the ground with your feet. You can run as far as you can. Who dares to miss any inordinary man? I will kill him when I turn around, and Earth Immortal can be regarded as a life-saving. Jin Dan Yuanying Earth Immortal has not enough heads, so we use the middle 5 realms below Earth Immortal to make up. Chao Gun, Xie Songhua, and the others, all the sword cultivators inside and outside the house, have left the Chuanzhou mountain boundary in an instant. Together they help those chi practitioners and ordinary masters try to stay away from Chuanzhou mountain. In the lobby, only Chen Pingan and Ning Yao were left. And that fellow Taoist Su Jun, who is the bottleneck of the immortal realm. Chen Pingan said, to be precise, you are an autopsy, and then a dead soldier. In this conspiracy, there is another indispensable key link. There must be a great demon who can guess Zhou Mi's intentions of Wuxin, and cooperate with him skillfully. I told you as soon as I entered the door. They are all smart people. Don't work so hard to hide them. Why bother? Right, the Jiazi Zhangguan Lane who is proficient in refining things. Or the brother Shuqin who is as famous as me. Why are you two flirting with each other? Why don't you become a Taoist couple? Don't worry, the red envelope money, I will definitely make it up next time when I'm a guest at Manhuang again. Wang Jia couldn't control his lips, and a voice sounded, the hearty voice of an old man said, it is worthy of being the official of the South Shouqin and the North Yin. I and the Shouqin Sword Immortal have planned so hard here, but we still can't hurt the official. It is true that the official can be brought down. There are hidden officials. Another warm and mellow voice came from Wang Jia's mouth, how is it? I have already said that you shouldn't be greedy for everything, and you can earn a little. Another person interjected, Lord Ingguan, I am here too. It's a rare opportunity. Let's talk a little more. Brother Chen, I also have a Taoist couple now, so why don't we exchange gifts and exchange money? Chen Pingan ignored all these noisy reminiscences, put his hands on his sleeves, and said with a smile, since there is such a gathering, I guess Xiao Xing is right next to you. Xiao Yun over there really laughed and said, Girl Ning, I'm doing pretty well here now, the third highest throne. Do you want me to make a useless ascension to join in the fun, and treat it as a gift for you too? Money? Ning Yao didn't respond either. The eyes of that Wang Jia regained clarity, as if he had returned to his original face, looked at the green shirt, shook his head, as if to say, forget it, this is the end of the matter, don't save me. It turned out that Chen Pingan reminded Ning Yao with his heart, and helped him quietly hand out a small sword. He then used the flying sword to open the way, and at the same time cut out a small isolated world with the bird in the cage. Only in this way did he find Wang Jia's true heart. In the shortest possible time, he learned about some of the monks' past, and at the same time tried to save the real Wang Jia. He resorted to various methods and moved extremely quickly, using a series of talismans to suppress the small world of the human body. Now that Ning Yao was present and she had entered the 14th realm, the minister who was the mastermind of this matter was too lazy to do anything else, but to blow up Wang Jia's real body, Yin God, Yang God and soul. The more insidious method was to the minister has sword energy entrenched in an inconspicuous aura of Wang Jia's soul. Even if Chen Pingan can borrow a few big talismans to reverse a short period of time in one fell swoop, it will only make Wang Jia, who seems to be back to normal, suffer even more. That's all. The scene of Wang Jia's real body collapsing is like a tree blossoming and falling. Before Ning Yao handed out a sword. His lips moved slightly, and there was a look of relief in his eyes. He and the green shirt were whispering. Ning Yao put his sword back into its sheath, hesitated for a moment, and asked, what did he tell you when he was dying? Chen Pingan said, 2 sentences. One is it has nothing to do with you, no need to feel guilty. Ningyao waited for a while, then asked, is there another sentence? Chen Pingan was a little helpless, and gave the answer in 8 words. Ningyao nodded. Chen Pingan was silent for a long time. When he remembered something, he raised his hand and rubbed his cheek vigorously, and said, actually, I guessed a lot of things randomly, but the ministers and Guanxiang are not smart enough to stand up to fraud. I am sure that Wang Jia will become a puppet on strings, most off a basis for the key. Do you know what it is? Ningyao shook his head, I can't guess. Chen Pingan said, if you want to fight Wang Jia, there must be a reason. Ningyao said, what kind of reason is this? Chen Ping walked to the entrance of the lobby, crossed the threshold, sat on the steps outside, took out the vermilion gourd, shook the jug, and asked with a soft smile, I'm curious, how can I keep my strength? Ningyao sat on the side, you are not very good at guessing other people's minds, and it seems that you have a mantra, guess? Chen Pingan raised his head and took a sip of wine, wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, squinted his eyes and said with a smile, with you by my side, I won't be bothered to use my brain. Ningyao said, do you still remember that I entered the 14th realm, came here, and saw your first avatar? What does it mean? Chen Pingan said, the alias is Chen Ji, and the Zhuji sect who is only a few steps away from Jingyang Mountain is the leader of Yushan Mountain. He is greedy, angry, ignorant, slow and suspicious. Ningyao raised his eyebrows, didn't he feel angry? She thought it was a way to suppress anger. That's why Ningyao showed up here, so he was willing to stop. Since he guessed wrong, and he was a mistake, Ningyao should just pretend that there was no such thing. From the corner of Chen Ping's eyes, he could see the lovely expression of the beloved woman. She was wrong and right. Gently shake the jug. Chen Ping always felt that there seemed to be 2 contradictory words written on every flagon in the world. Booze. Stop drinking. Chen Ping raised his head and drank a big mouthful of wine, as if he wanted to stop drinking. It was very simple, just finish drinking the wine in the pot. In the late spring of the world, the grass grows and the warbler flies. Just now, someone wanted that green-clothed sword fairy to do something. I invite the hidden officials to kill the wilderness. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.